Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I'm Mike Graham and this is the Mike Graham Show. It is 7 o'clock. It is Thursday. I don't know how it's got to Thursday, the 9th of April. And as you can see on the international dial all over the world, it is time to wake up, get out of bed and smell the coffee because we are still in a state of war, apparently, according to all the newspapers. We said yesterday how ridiculous it all was that they were getting very, very carried away with the fact that we were about to sort of hit 1 minute to midnight on the nuclear alarm button. But it would seem to me that they're still negotiating. Trump is still negotiating. The Iranians are still negotiating. Keir Starmer has gone to the Middle East to tell everybody what he's going to do to open the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, you get more chance of him opening his legs, you know. Well, that's another story. But William Yarwood is here from the Taxpayers Alliance. William, very good morning.
Morning, Mike. How are you, man?
Do you feel like the world is a safer place as Keir Starmer careers around the Middle East?
Well, Mike, let me be absolutely clear. This is about abiding by international law, okay? And I'm very serious. I'm sticking by my principles of putting British interests first.
Right. That's a very good impression.
I'm improving every week,
actually,
I think.
It's uncanny. I feel like he's sitting here with me.
I know. Well, my name, last name is...
the only chance of him ever sitting here with me.
Well, the last name is Yarwood, Mike, so I have to try and live up to that name in a slight way.
Right. But what, I mean, you know, yesterday morning, as we were doing this show, we got the news that he was going to the Middle East, and everyone kind of went, really? Why? Where's he going? Who's he going to see? And everyone went, well, he's going to see some key leaders. They clearly didn't have any moves sorted out. We found out last night that apparently he was on holiday in Spain. Yes. And I said last night on Twitter, I said, what's he doing going on holiday? We're in the middle of a bloody international crisis. He's on holiday, you know, with his bucket and spade and his Jewish wife and his two kids, possibly three, depending on which story you believe, all digging around in the sort of the southern the beaches of Malaga. And they went, you better come back to London, Prime Minister, because World War III's about to break out. What's he doing going on bloody holiday? What's wrong with him?
Well, that could be. Do you want that answer chronologically or thematically or alphabetically? I can do a long list for you, mate.
Or just go on holiday, don't come back.
Yeah, don't come back. Yeah, but also like, so on the Spanish, can you guys keep him? Like, cheers. Because if he wants to play around in the sand, make sand castles.
Yes.
Although, like, Keir Starmer has like no ounce of fun in him.
No.
Like, what would he do on holiday?
Can you imagine
he wouldn't go on the lash.
Right.
He wouldn't be, standing up and dancing around and enjoying that Spanish
Arsenal
music.
Losing yet another cup final.
He could do. Also, I don't know what Keir Starmer would look like in non-boring grey clothes. Yeah. He's not going to be wearing shorts and a nice hat and a.
He's definitely a guy that would wear socks with sandals.
Oh,
isn't he?
totally, 100%.
And do you remember they went to Madeira once and he got into trouble because he tried to push his kids in front of the line where everybody was getting on this sort of, this little ride to go down the hill. He's just the world. I can't imagine him being a decent father because he's useless with children, right? Can't imagine him being a decent husband. Wife hates him, right? Doesn't want to get anything to do with him, right? Separate rooms and all that. And can you imagine just the kind of the general just boredom you have of sitting like, what are we doing today, Dad?
We're abiding by our principles and international law.
Should we play the clip? Yeah. Let's play the clip.
3 minutes in, I've already triggered the Starmer alert.
Let's play the clip. Here he goes.
I've acted as you would expect of a British Prime Minister, which is by being absolutely focused on what is our national interest. And that's why I've applied my principles and my values throughout. And my principles and values made sure that our decisions were that we wouldn't get involved in any action without a lawful basis and without a viable, thought-through plan. That was the right position for the United Kingdom. And of course, that has included us taking action, collective self-defence. I'm here to say thank you to some of those who have been defending our allies and British interests in the region. But the principles of not getting dragged into this war, principles of always saying the UK will act only on the lawful
principles
basis,
always act in the national interest. Let me be clear.
They're the right principles.
Let me be clear.
And as I say,
he doesn't blink. I need to stop blinking. Oh, he smiled just slightly. Oh, that was weird. That's different from him. We have to be absolutely clear with our principles on the international stage. Hold on.
I'm absolutely laser focused. I mean, this is a guy, he talks about principles, right? This is a bloke who got his wife's underwear bought for her by Lord Ali, who bought a pair, who wore his sunglasses and his glasses bought by Lord Ali, stayed in Lord Ali's penthouse, pretended it was his own house. What principles are we talking about here?
What principles? And also like this, the man who betrayed every principle he ran for when he was running to be Labour leader, right? He was, I'm going to honour the Corbyn legacy and we're going to abolish student loans and we're going to do this and going to do that. And a few years later, he was like, well, actually, the situation has actually changed. So he's got no principles at all. So what principles he's talking about, I don't know.
Absolute and utter scumbag, right? How about this? We've got Starmer on the poll today. He's been touted as a statesman. What is Keir Starmer? Is he a statesman? Is he a liar? Is he two-tier? Or is he just a wanker? Quite frankly, we can say that. Funnily enough, wanker is the lead.
By a large amount,
68% of you think Keir Starmer is a wanker. Funnily enough, you might hear that being sung at the weekend at a sporting event that you go to, and certainly possibly in our live show when we do it in May. The Social British Empire. Still tickets available, by the way, through Ticketmaster. Now, yesterday, I made a big song and dance as well about the whole uselessness of the press, because the night before the so-called, annihilation of the civilization of Iran, everyone was going, this is a terrible, terrible thing. Trump is now, threatening to sort of kill off part of the human race. John Swinney, I think, in Scotland said it was genocide, even though it didn't happen. And they all had to do a sort of reverse ferret in the middle of the night when it went, they've actually got a ceasefire. And we know the ceasefire may or may not be now holding. It may be very fragile. It may not actually work. But at least, what they predicted would happen didn't happen. And I said, one of the problems I've got with the press is that they're just performative. They just want to get on the plane, sit with the Prime Minister, get a question to him that they can then play out later on and look as if they know him. And Robert Peston, I'm very happy to say, illustrated that brilliantly yesterday, and I retweeted his own tweet. Have a look at this. This is literally gives you no information at all about the Prime Minister or what he's doing, and it's just all about me. I'm Robert Peston. Look, there's a plane behind me. I'm getting on it. The Prime Minister's on it. I'm as autistic as you like. Have a look at this.
Just hours after President Trump and Iran announced a 2-week ceasefire, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is on his way to the Gulf to meet leaders to see what he can do to translate what is a temporary cessation of hostilities into something more permanent. His big project in recent days with the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper is to put together 40 like-minded nations, all with an interest in trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to allow oil, gas and other cargo to flow through and to ease the tremendous shock on the global economy that cessation of very important traffic has caused. So a lot riding on this visit by the British Prime Minister to the Gulf. I'll be with him and reporting for the next couple of days.
Might as well have had that woman behind him doing the report.
What was the point of that?
She doesn't know any more than he does.
No.
He doesn't know any more than she does.
Well, that's what
I'll be with him. I'll be with the Prime Minister. I'll be asking him, and I said this yesterday, that, despite all the things that are going on, they've all forgotten about Morgan McSweeney's phone. If I was on a plane with Keir Starmer, I'd go, oi, what's happened to Morgan McSweeney's phone? Where is it? And what are you doing about finding it? And what are you doing about getting the stuff on it, off it, so that you can examine what it says?
Because deep down, all of this stuff is a complete distraction, right? Because he has no influence on this Middle East crisis at all. Because even the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense of the United States have mocked Starmer and mocked. I mean, they called him he ain't no Winston Churchill, basically. And they mocked him.
He's Neville Chamberlain.
But someone said at least Neville Chamberlain prepared Britain for war. at least he rearmed Britain. But that's just a classic example from the lobby, so to speak, where basically it's not really about reporting any facts or getting any news. It's just about having a picture taken on the plane, smiling next to the Prime Minister, and basically saying buzzwords about there's a lot riding this. There was a few in there. There's a lot riding this. It's very important. According to who? According to who? And this is actually my issue with some mainstream media broadcasters. I turn them on and it's all just international news. It's all just like what's going on in this country, what's going on in that country. Wait, What about this country? What's going on here?
Yes.
What's going on in day-to-day life? And
what about all the asylum seekers, stroke illegal migrants who are getting done literally
When's the
every
last time
single
ITV
day
talked about
for some
that?
kind of horrific, sexual assault on some young woman? Total, absolute, and utter dereliction of duty.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's because there's for years been a too close relationship between the lobby and the
Well, I've
political
said this
class.
for many a year, that they're not curious enough. They're incurious is the word that I use, because basically they don't ask the questions that should be asked, that the people want them to ask, because they're worried about upsetting the apple cart, and they might not get invited back on the plane next time.
And they might not get invited to that nice little Christmas dinner party or drinks party or whatever it might be. And actually there's another part here which I think is actually quite important, is that a lot of the lobby are just gossip journalists.
Yeah.
That's all it is celebrity gossip.
Yeah.
It's like what Keir Starmer said to him, said to her, who's runners and riders and things like that. It's not like, there's proper journalists out there who work in all the papers and do like proper stuff on health, on data, on home affairs stuff.
Yeah.
But I think there's an element, and not all lobby journalists like this, but there's an element of lobby journalists that are basically just obsessed with being in the scene, so to
absolutely,
speak.
and totally being part of that inner circle. I get a phone call from the Prime Minister's top aide, and that makes me feel important.
Yeah.
And when I'm in the pub, and people go, "Oh, are you getting another call from the Prime Minister's aide?"
Yeah.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Do your bleeding job, find something out, get a story that actually people care about. I.e., what's going on with Keir Starmer in his head? Why hasn't he left the bloody job?
Not much.
Right, I'm very clear.
And also, who wants to call Prime Minister Keir Starmer at 7 o'clock in the evening?
I know. It's absolutely shocking. But, in reality, I don't know if he's come back. I don't know if he stayed there. I think he ended up meeting up with Mohammed bin Salman, the bloodthirsty killer who runs Saudi Arabia. He's already had the Syrian president,
as well.
in Downing Street. But he hasn't met up with the Iranian leaders. No. So what exactly is he doing?
Yeah, what's the point of him?
What's the point?
Because if he's
allies.
If he constantly says that this is not a war, and fine, that's the position he can take, right? But then what's the point of him going to the Middle East then? Like, is it so he can show he's doing something? And Keir Starmer does this a lot, actually. Yeah. Keir Starmer likes to do press conferences, does international visits, just to prove he's doing something and show he's being proactive.
Well, Preston said, didn't he, that he's trying to put together another coalition of the willing, where there's 40 countries agreeing on something. Well, this doesn't mean anything. Yeah. I might as well get you and 39 people over the road at the local railway station to go, right, do we all believe that croissants are better in the morning than Danish pastries? Yes, a coalition of the willing. We've all decided we're going to issue a joint statement in which we will be making out very, very plainly and laser focused that croissants are better than Danish pastries. It means nothing.
It means nothing. And all it is just stuff to put in a press release, or because obviously the papers have to report on this stuff because they're the government. Right. The government says something, they have to report on it. So even if they do nothing and say nothing, even as boring as Keir Starmer and as useless as he is, it will be front page news. They have to talk about it, and that's why Keir Starmer likes doing it, because he knows.
This is why the media's dying, because the media has kind of been overtaken by the ordinary people of this country who can read for themselves on Twitter, on Facebook, on various other different kinds of modern digital media. And they're ahead of the game. They're not interested in listening to Times Radio, where they tell them, the Prime Minister has just been in, Qatar, and he's had a meeting with the Qataris, and they've decided that, the Iranians are all horrible. Great, okay, so how's that a story? It's not a story. And what are you going to do?
And what?
Well, I'll tell you what, I know. Let's send a warship to the Gulf. We haven't got one. And also, we did have one, but it went out for 2 weeks, and we had to take it back into repair yard, the HMS Dragon. It's pathetic, isn't it?
It's been completely pathetic. Also, another piece of pathetic news, obviously, we have today is obviously there was a Russian vessel. A Russian tanker in the Channel.
Yes.
And we've just sort of allowed it to go through. I think the Telegraph...
And this is the Telegraph story about
Telegraph front page.
Putin mocks Starmer in the Channel.
Yeah, and there was a great bit on the Telegraph website where one of the journalists is literally on a boat pointing at the tanker and in the Channel, and it's like, this is completely surreal. Yeah. This is our area. What are you doing here? And the Prime Minister, who's like, we're because he promised to crack down on things like this a while back. He promised to crack down, and apparently, basically, not a single Russian vessel has been. Yeah,
I can show you that.
Not a single Russian vessel.
This is how we do the paper review on the Mike Graham Show. There's the paper, right? See it? Putin mocks Starmer in the Channel. You know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's ridiculous, and not a single one of them has, because this is not the first time this has happened, not a single one of them has been caught. I mean, I know there's reports...
Because you know why? They don't care about Starmer. They look at him and go, you are literally one of those, all right?
Yeah.
You're a complete wanker, we don't care.
Yeah, because, I mean...
They've taken part in the poll this morning.
Yeah, I mean, you know, imagine Putin and Starmer sitting in a room together. Putin's not going to be thinking, oh no, it's Keir Starmer.
You know those memes where you get Putin just nodding like this, he's just going, like that. And that's what he's going to do, because he knows that Starmer's completely useless. He's literally like I mean, he put out some statement yesterday about how he was going off to the Middle East to, take part in bilateral negotiations. And I just went, he's like a fart in the wind.
Yeah.
That's what he's like.
That he is, and he likes, I mean, that's such another Keir Starmer line, isn't it? Engaging in bilateral, conversations on the international stage. He loves it because also, actually, I think he likes it for another reason. On the international stage, there is no ideology, there is no voter base. Right. He prefers to live in that sort of world of nebulous connections and networks and backroom meetings and decision making. I think he actually hates frontline politics and ideological politics more than anything else. And to be fair to him, he has actually admitted this when he did an interview with The Economist a while back, because he sees himself as the last bastion of centrist, centre-left politics in Great Britain against the tides of the Green Party and reform.
There's a very small section of this country, and it's a very small section, but I see them occasionally on Twitter, who say, oh, but he's doing such a good job standing up to Donald Trump. We are not in the pocket of the Americans. We are going to stand up for ourselves. And you go, well, that's all very well, but to what end exactly?
Yeah, exactly.
Because if the Iranians decide to turn their missiles on the UK, we have no defences.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have no ability to stop them from shooting everybody dead in somewhere like Ipswich.
No.
They could literally send a missile tomorrow that would completely annihilate Ipswich.
Yeah, and...
some people would say it's a good thing. I mean, I wouldn't be one of them, by the way.
And I think that this is going to continue on. Starmer's not going to change. He's going to continue to do these silly little meetings abroad. He's going to continue to use his little buzzword, the principles, the international stage, bilateral agreements, because he feels like these are genuinely things that make him a good leader. Important. And also when PMQs comes back, and I'm looking forward to PMQs coming back. Is
that next week?
I think it's the end. I think it's next week. Yeah. What he will have is his backbenchers and even opposition members standing up and go, well, I think the Prime Minister did a really good job on the international stage this week, and is the Prime Minister agreeing with me that we need to put all of our efforts into defending this or that or the other? And it's all just theatre. It's all just guff. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, I mean, look at this story about the Russian vessel going through the English Channel, right? It's called the Admiral Grigorovich, a Black Sea Fleet frigate. It went through the channel yesterday, accompanied by a pair of Shadow Fleet ships. A Royal Naval vessel followed close behind. What he said apparently last week, this is Keir Starmer, he said he would make it very, very much more even harder for Russian ships to sail through the straits of the English Channel.
Yeah. Keir Starmer likes being made harder.
He has no idea, he does. Britain, however, is yet to seize a single Russian vessel.
Yeah.
So you go, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stop you sailing through there, and then they sail through it and you go, okay, we'll just set you off with it this time then.
Yeah. But next time it's going to be even harder.
Yeah, next time it's going to be even harder.
The letter we're going to write to you is going to be even harsher.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to call in the Russian ambassador and tell him he's a very, very naughty boy.
Yeah, exactly. But that's all he has. That's all he's got. That's all he's got. He can't do any more sanctions because Russia's sanctioned up to the eyeballs. He can't. He doesn't want to expel the Russian ambassador quite clearly. He doesn't. I mean, the last Conservative government did see some billionaire yachts and stuff, but there's a finite amount of them to do. Yeah. I mean, at this point, what's he going to do in a realistic capability? Right. This letter is very strongly worded that you are breaking international law. What is the point? What is the point?
Guided by my principles.
Well, if he was a Dalek, maybe he could laser them a bit, but
yeah. That's why he can't go upstairs.
Yeah.
Mrs. Starr was going, are you coming up? No, I can't get up the stairs. Let's do a couple of super chats, shall we, while we're here? Here with William Yarwood. This, of course, is the Mike Graham Show. Let's have a look. super chat. Wishing everyone a happy Thursday, LTL. Thank you very much indeed. I don't know how it got to Thursday. We've really gone to
bank holiday, mate.
Timothy goes, is it no coincidence that the ceasefire breaks down just after Starmer arrives in the Middle East? Well, I wouldn't be surprised. Alan says this, Starmer is mentally ill. Broadmoor beckons for him. I think he is actually mentally ill. And then one from Judas. Did you see the parody video of Starmer singing I'm a Wanker, sung to the tune of the Monkees' I'm a Believer? Hit the like button. I haven't seen that. One final one, something wickedly. I thought my cuddly fish was fun. We have got a cuddly fish. It's down on the floor over there. We don't always have it on the desk, but yeah, we're very much in favour of the cuddly fish. I might take it for Ziggy actually, because he loves the big herring that he's got. You might even like the cuddly one as well. To show you. Oh, there he is. Yeah. To show you, by the way, the sort of mentality of the left and how useless they are. Let's have a look at. There you go.
Oh.
There it is.
I've got.
Isn't that nice?
It's nice. Hello.
It's like something out of Nemo. Was it Nemo?
Yeah, it is Nemo, and it's finding Nemo.
Here's Alistair Campbell, right? A man who, for some reason, thinks anybody wants to listen to him about the Middle East and, wars in the Middle East in particular.
Yeah.
But he does a podcast, which is actually rather, unfortunately, quite popular. But have a look at this, where he's hosing down old Vladimir Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, in quite an objectionable and obnoxious manner. Have a look.
It's quite a surreal notification to get President of Ukraine is inviting you to a scheduled Zoom meeting.
Right, so we will start in a minute. So
thank you so much. Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good to see you. Thanks so much.
No, thank you. Thank you. I'm very good.
Well,
listen, thank you for everything, and thank you for doing this interview now. And if you're ready, I'm ready to start.
I'm okay. Ready.
And why is Campbell doing that weird accent? Hello, how are you? It's like Borat, isn't it?
He's like,
one day break the cage.
to win new meerkat toy.
You will never get this. You will never get this. One day you get this. You break the cage.
Compare the Campbell.com. You get free meerkat toy.
It's like that.
It is. I'm very proud to say I've never listened to a single episode of The Rest is Politics. Very proud.
I would never do
because
that.
what's the point?
What is the point?
What is the point? It's just like Alistair Campbell. I was did a Keir Starmer impression then. I avoided that. Not the same one. It's just like a verbal tick for me now.
Stewart, the man who gets everything wrong.
Yeah, the man who gets everything wrong and seems to look more dishevelled the more you see him.
There was a movie, and Pooch might remember this. There was a movie made, I think, in the 60s, A Man Who Knew Too Much. Yes. Rory Stewart's the opposite of that. Yeah. A man who didn't know anything and gets everything wrong.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is going to win the US election. I've been doing some research on it, and I've put hundreds of thousands of pounds on it because everybody's wrong about the fact that she's going to lose to Donald Trump. She lost to Donald Trump.
Quite
he got that completely wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
She got completely trounced. Yeah, I've never listened to it, and I don't. And it's weird because I think for a lot of people who are interested in politics, they will immediately just tune in to go on their Spotify and search like the most popular politics podcast, and therefore immediately click on The Rest is Politics. So actually, it's sort of a weird feedback loop where they're popular because people think they're popular. Yeah. And then it just goes back round and round and round and round. But like I've seen clips from it before. And
it is extraordinary how popular it is.
Yeah, it is because
who are these people that think it's worth listening
to?
It's
quite dry. It's quite boring. Like Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart agree on basically everything. Yes. But I mean, surely the sign of a good political podcast is two people who are on opposite sides who actually disagree with each other. Exactly. And actually, some papers do a very good job of that. Like, they'll have like someone from the Daily Mirror on this, someone from the Daily Express, or they'll have someone from the Telegraph and the Guardian. Sky used to do this quite well. Actually, they used to have like two proper journalists on from different sides.
Yeah, they haven't got any proper journalists.
No, exactly. And then let them fight each other for 20 minutes. Yeah. But I don't understand and I think actually in the UK, the political podcast circuit is very different from the US because in the US it's very dominated by, first of all, young people, and it's dominated by people outside of the political realm, while in the United Kingdom it's very dominated. It tends
to be more right-wing.
It tends to be more right-wing, but also in the UK it tends to be more centrist and dominated by SW1, the lobby, big organisations, big newspapers, big organisations, because the rest of politics is owned by a conglomerate group, of course.
Well, it's owned by Gary Lineker.
Gary Lineker, right, exactly. So
which is even more depressing.
Yeah. And then they all go to these silly little like fake award ceremonies where they all award each other, podcast awards.
Yeah, right.
And it's like it's all just the same people. It's journalists from Sky, it's journalists from this group, it's politicians from here, it's a washed-up politician there. Like, so actually, there's not really a massive independent podcast circuit in the UK, especially on the right.
No.
And that's because this lot has dominated it for too long.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely shocking. Really, really shocking. There's some other stories we should talk about. Telegraph has got a story on page 1 saying Britain is now more divided than it's ever been. And I think that's probably right. It started during Brexit, but it's now sort of got worse. And I don't know what you do about that, really. Well,
the reason I think Britain at least feels more divided is because, first of all, the Brexit stuff was a symptom of just disquiet and discontent with the United Kingdom and also with the political class.
Yes.
And then what did the political class do for the next few years? Well, they tried to obfuscate the vote.
Yeah.
That's what they tried to do, basically, until 2019, of course, Boris...
Tried to pretend it didn't happen.
Tried to pretend it didn't happen, or tried to redo it, or say they didn't know what they were voting for. So actually, lots of people were sort of finally... It's almost revealed to them that the political class actually in reality just wasn't interested in their opinion. Their opinion is a sort of, second order consequence,
Yes.
you're allowed to vote every 5 years, but, it doesn't really change anything all that much.
We'll just carry on the way we are.
And then, of course, people voted in 2019 for in quite a large way for Boris Johnson and the Conservative government, who promised a lot of things, did nothing, basically, actually did the opposite of what they were going to say.
Completely screwed. I mean, they had a majority of 80, which in those days was thought to be massive.
Yeah.
Much less massive, of course, than the Labour Party majority now. But they could have done anything.
They could have done anything.
And they did nothing.
They picked up the crown. Boris Johnson picked up the crown, but then dropped it in the gutter, basically, as soon as he got it. Well, that was the Boris wave, of course, the mass migration betrayal. There's COVID-19 lockdowns. He betrayed all of his old sort of quite liberal libertarian principles on nanny state stuff and became like very anti. Like there was this big thing a while back, which I know sounds like a minor thing, but he wanted to buy one, get one free deals, and he wanted to ban putting chocolates at the front of like, a store, cash register and things like that. And I thought like, you're the Prime Minister, come on, you've got surely more important things to care about. And then of course there was the levelling up scheme, which turned into a complete farce and was essentially just a way for backbenchers to essentially just, suck more money out of taxpayers and just shove it around the country to spend on chess parts.
But that's the other problem with the way that this country is governed, isn't it? Because we had Steve Baker in the other day, who is a former government minister, and he was kind of trying to make the case for why government works in the way that it does, trying to make the case that civil servants are really clever, they do a good job, and trying to sort of defend the indefensible, really. And the listeners and the viewers were absolutely crushing him on the chat, going, "What's he talking about? This guy's talking absolute nonsense." But there is this kind of, it seems to me, bubble inside of Westminster where people go, "Yeah, but well, you tried doing it. It's a really hard job."
Yeah.
And you go, "Well, yeah, but if you're making £35,000 a year and you're working 12 hours a day and you're trying to feed a family of 4, you're not really going to have any sympathy for a government minister just because he's got to read out of a red box every night and he has to work quite late into the early hours of the morning.
You try
you're
doing
getting paid 110 grand a year plus expenses. You'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. You try doing what that guy on 35k is doing, right? Working 12 hours a night, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it is. Sometimes they do work late shifts. But nevertheless, I like Steve. I love Steve very much, and I think he has some very important insights, especially on the economic front. But I think that people on my side of the argument need to get a lot more radical about government reform.
Yes.
And I think that...
Yeah, because I think people are sick to death of being spoon-fed now a sort of a litany of reasons why it's their fault. And why you have to pay more tax because you have to pay for the NHS. Well, the NHS hasn't got enough money. You have to pay more tax. You go, no, it's not. It's bloody well not working. So make it work.
Exactly. Well, we at the Taxpayers Alliance for years, as you know, Mike, have constantly called out actually the solution to everything isn't just spend more taxpayers' money. That's almost like never actually the solution to things. When it comes to the civil service, we did a paper earlier this year, a briefing note, which showed that the civil service is now over 550,000 people just in Whitehall alone, with increases in comm staff in places like the MOD being like by over a third, and there's also now more middle management inside the civil service as well, people who just manage the managers, and then people wonder why things are going up.
And up and up.
Exactly. And salaries keep going up. There's now more people in the civil service earning over £150,000 a year than there ever has been.
Right, which used to be a specifically privileged position. I mean, we spoke to another guy this week who was the guy who was involved in the recent change in the law, or at least the possible coming change in the law about fire safety with things like sofas and mattresses. Sounds a very dull story, very boring story. But Terry Ayres, that's right, that was his name. Thank you, Pooch. His whole raison d'etre was that when he worked in the civil service, he worked inside a group for which there was something like 7 people, and they were basically in the Department of Business, and they were all about sort of health and safety and all of that sort of thing. He said, "Do you know how many people are now working here?" I said, "No," and I sort of took a wild guess. I said, "Well, has it doubled it?" He went, "It's 530 people who are now doing the jobs that 7 of us used to do." And basically, it's become an agency within a civil service department. And that's the kind of nonsense and waste that we're having to do with.
And that happens all the time. I mean, that's not just inside the civil service, that's also in relation to the quangocracy, the wider and expanding quangocracy, which this Labour government's not helping. They've set up like 27 new quangos and a bunch of new inquiries. And that's obviously just taking more taxpayers' cash, funneling more money to, mates of theirs, just creating sort of, it's a make-work scheme, a lot of this kind of stuff. So I think we need to get more radical with government reform, because it's all very good and well, Mike, having a collection of political principles which are sound in principle, but if you can't implement them because the system doesn't work, what's the bloody point in having any of these policies in the first place?
Because that is the bottom line, and that's what I said to Steve Baker in the end. I said, people wouldn't mind paying more money in tax and wouldn't mind giving you as much money as you'd like as a salary if you can do a job. But if you're not doing the job, and if you're inefficient and you're basically not making anything happen or anything work, then what's the point of it?
Yeah, exactly. And this is always the argument against MPs' pay. I mean, when the MPs' pay news came out, we at the TPA were virtually the only group to actually criticise it in the public, and luckily that got loads of coverage, and I know you covered it on your show multiple times and had Elliot on to talk about it. But the fundamental point is that lots of people think that actually the real problem is that MPs aren't paid enough, and if we paid MPs more, they'd suddenly turn into these magnificent statespeople who would immediately be able to solve everything. I don't think that's the way to go, because all you would do is just give backbench Labour MPs like 100, 200 grand more.
And frankly, you know probably as many MPs as I do, and many of them are very good, and they're very diligent, and they work very hard, but also loads of them are not very bright.
No.
Loads of them haven't done anything in their lives, and we saw that report, I think, in the Sunday Times a couple of weeks ago, in which it was revealed that something like 245 of the 280 Labour MPs have never worked in the private sector. They've come from charities, they've come from,
public sector
unions, they've come from
Parliament itself, they worked in politics.
They worked in politics, but they've never actually had a job in which, making money was an important thing for them to do.
And that's why, and then that translates into their own political views and why they're pursuing the things that they are pursuing. Right? It makes complete sense when you see it like that. And I think a lot of people, I remember it was Chris Hope over at GB News who put that on his Twitter account, and he basically said that he thinks that this is actually an unnamed reason why the Labour government functions as it does. Because we can make jokes about, there's no one on the front bench that has business experience, but actually there is no one on the back benches that has business experience either. So it all just feeds into each other, which is even worse. Because at least if there was some business experience on the back benches, they might say, well, actually, Secretary of State, when I was running my business, I think this should happen instead.
Joe Schmo.
But that doesn't happen. So that's why there's no opposition to things like the Employers' National Insurance hike. There's no opposition to things like the family farms tax.
I mean, we've seen this morning, a piece in the papers in the Times this morning, agency enforcing workers' rights laws will be able to spy on bosses. They're basically saying that Angela Rayner's new workers' rights charter will allow for people to put secret cameras into bosses' boardrooms in order to see what they're saying about the people who work there. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and also you're just making it harder for employers to do their jobs, making it harder to hire people. They're making it more expensive to hire people, but also now you're putting literal Big Brother. You're putting Big Brother in the boardroom basically, and And also, if there's a certain section of the population, mainly probably people my age, unfortunately, who would want to do things like that because they want to try and rinse something out their boss because they can't be asked working, really. They'd rather just get a payout, right? You know, why on earth would they take a chance on hiring a young person if they feel like, oh, well, young people are more likely to do this kind of stuff and screw me over in some way, report me to a tribunal, and because, you know, I can't afford the legal fees, I would just have to give a settlement to pay it out.
I was talking to a guy yesterday about a business that had to fold because it wasn't making any money, and he said that the employment laws as they were at that time, which were not as bad as they are now, meant that he would have had to pay them all off, the people that worked for him, a week, I think, for every year to make them redundant, 300,000 quid. And he was like, we didn't have any money, so we ended up folding the company and they got nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that's the result. You don't actually, you know, the people don't get better looked after.
No.
They actually get worse treatment.
And actually one thing I learned about employment law actually that I didn't know is that apparently it's really hard to fire someone after about a year or two.
Yeah.
I did not know that because my original thinking was, okay, sure, someone might perform well for maybe a year or two, but then people can fall off and people can, you know, then you may need to get rid of them or move them around and stuff. I did not know in employment law that actually once you've had someone for a year or two, you're effectively stuck with them until you either make them redundant or you...
I've had two situations, right, in two different companies I worked for, both of which ended up going to the wall and closing down. And at the time, both of those companies that I worked for had somebody who was on suspension for a particular, you know, malfeasance or whatever it was. And the companies both closed down, but they were still paid, because the law said that you had to keep paying them even though the company wasn't operational anymore. And that was how mad it was.
That's crazy.
And for, I think, 6 months after the company closed down, they were still getting a salary, even though they weren't doing any work.
Money for nothing. Money for nothing.
Now, I've got to finish up with one final question, because you look to me like a guy that might like a bit of gentleman's relish, right?
That sounds dodgy, mate.
It does sound dodgy, and I apologise in
advance. What do I look like, Keir Starmer?
I've been made it very clear that he likes the gentleman's relish from Ukraine, I understand. But that's another story. Apparently, gentleman's relish is no more. I've never understood gentleman's relish. I see it in shops, and I see it sort of, you get sort of emails from people saying, would you like to buy some gentleman's relish? You know, mail order. And I'm going, not really, I don't know what it tastes like. I'm not interested.
I don't think I've ever had it
it's
in
not a
my
Taxpayers
life.
See, I would imagine Taxpayers Alliance has got this kind of, you know, cupboard full of things like gentleman's relish, chutney, mustard, you know, things to put on your sandwiches at lunchtime.
See, a lot of our offices actually don't either go in for sandwiches, I think, as a lunchtime option. A few of us are quite fans of... There's a strutting ground just around the corner from us, so that we have, like, wraps or fish and chips and things like that.
Fish and chips, very good.
Sometimes there'll be a meal deal. I do occasionally go for a meal deal.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I do like sandwiches, but I'm a bit woke.
What's your preferred sandwich?
I'm a bit woke. I like sourdough.
That's
I have, like... But that's sourdough.
With liking good food.
Yeah, the sourdough, and I'll have like proper butter in it, not margarine. I'll have like I know usually stuff have like meat and then some kind of salad on it, so like tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce.
Woke about that.
No, okay, no. I thought sourdough was woke though.
I don't think it is.
I've heard sourdough is woke.
It's expensive, is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I went to Borough Market the other day, and I got a sandwich in a place called the what's it called? I can't remember the name. It was a beautiful Italian deli, and it was a sort of focaccia bread with salami, mortadella, tomatoes, balsamic vinegar, olive oil, and lettuce. Yeah. 13 quid.
Bloody hell.
I mean, it was lovely though.
Yeah, I bet. No, it sounds nice.
I sat in the sun and ate it and thought, this is great.
Yeah.
This will soak up the 3 bottles of wine I've just drunk. But it didn't.
Yeah, it was a bit nice yesterday. Well, because I was out in Cardiff.
The weather's amazing.
The weather's amazing.
Oh, you were in Cardiff.
I was in Cardiff yesterday.
Tell us about Cardiff. Yeah. What are you doing?
We at the Taxpayers Alliance have been campaigning in Cardiff against the.
Please forgive me. I've got.
We've been campaigning against Labour's Welsh Net Zero nonsense there. So in Cardiff City Council, they're imposing a new van supercharge, a new parking supercharge of vehicles weighing over 2 kg.
Right.
So that includes vans, SUVs, electric vehicles, ironically enough. Which mean, and also actually when you go to Cardiff, it's actually a very car-heavy city, and actually there's tons of tradespeople working in Cardiff as well. Like there was the area we were in, like you walk around a corner and you see like 4 vans, and they walk around a corner like 2 big family cars, right? These things are not luxuries; they're things that people used to get to work, to do their businesses, to take their kids to school, to go shopping, and it's just another war on motorists from Cardiff City Council, who has a pretty bad record of being rubbish to motorists.
And presumably you can park in a bay thinking I've paid for the parking, and then you get a bill or a penalty notice later.
You'll be charged
because
more.
you didn't pay a super charge.
Yeah, because you'll be charged more.
Outrageous,
yeah, it's outrageous. You'll be charged more, and also it's being tested in Cardiff because they want to do it in London.
Of course they do. But there's no question that Khan will push that for absolutely sure. William, great to see you.
Always great to see you,
Thank you
Mike.
very much indeed. William Yarwood there from the Taxpayers Alliance. Absolutely, always lovely to see him. Doesn't like gentleman's relish, but does like sourdough. We might do a poll maybe tomorrow, Pooch, on your favourite sandwich. It's always good for the weekend. Coming up, Henry Bolton is here. We'll get from him what's going on in the channel. I think there was something like 300 people crossing yesterday because the weather was rather nice, and it's only going to get worse. I think 5,000 have now crossed since the beginning of the year already, and there's no sign of a new deal from Shabana Mahmood or anything like that. Fiscal says, nice mic work. I don't know what that means. Oh, did you? Yeah. Oh, well done. Thank you very much. I don't know what's going on with my nose at the moment. It's like I've got these... I haven't had hay fever for a long time, not since I was about 10, and it's suddenly come back. And I've had it literally since November. Loving William this morning, great sense of humour, and in the ball. On the ball. I think so. No, you're in the ball.
I'm in the ball.
Yeah, give us a quick blast of Starmer before you go.
It was an absolute pleasure to be with you this morning, Mike. I was in the ball, as was you, and I like being in ball.
And all guaranteed by international law.
International law. And my principles.
I've been very clear. What's an absolute plonker? Coming up, as I say, we're now going to have a look at Greta Thunberg, who's now about, 27, and still pretending to be about 7. And apparently now she's moved on from Palestine, moved on from climate change, and there he is. And she's now apparently operating on behalf of the IRGC.
I'm well-armed, me.
Well-armed, yeah. The thing I always say about that particular clip is that he thinks that's a good clip.
Yeah.
Because they keep putting it out.
Does he actually think that's a good...
He thinks it's a good thing.
What is wrong
Shows
with
that
him?
he's very powerful and strong.
I've got the thrust in my fist.
Oh, Christ.
Why did I say that? That sounds weird. News.
Now, it's time to go to the news. Presumably, we learned yesterday that old Edward Hughes had overstepped the mark again and he'd come back without permission properly. So now I think we've got Fiona McLeod, haven't we?
Yeah, Edward's just gone off on holiday.
Well, no, because I told him to take some annual leave. Right? Let's take Fiona on.
Good morning. I'm Fiona McLeod. I'm standing in last minute as Edward Hughes has decided to take sudden leave. Edwina seems to think there is something going on between the two of us. I had already scheduled a short break to the Caribbean, so I don't know where she got that idea. Anyway, he's gone AWOL. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in Saudi Arabia today, meeting Gulf leaders, including Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Lovely Sir Keir says there's a lot of work to do to make the fragile US-Iran ceasefire permanent and reopen the Strait of Hormuz to stabilise global oil supplies. Back home, the 6-day strike by resident doctors in England enters its 3rd day. NHS bosses say services are holding up, but thousands of appointments have been postponed. That's the latest. More in half an hour. See you later, alligators.
All right. William's just leaving. Thank you very much. William Yarwood there. What a guy. What a great impersonation he does of Keir Starmer as well, by the way. Coming up, we've got loads and loads for you today. We're going to be talking some more about the state of play in the Middle East. We'll find out exactly what Keir Starmer's up to. There's no actual...
Middle East.
Prime Minister's questions, obviously, this week, and there's no Parliament this week. But we're going to be talking to Jamie Jenkins down in Wales. He'll give us the latest stats on the crossings that have been going on this week because the weather's been rather nice. Sunil Sharma's going to join us. Vanessa Frake as well on the news that the Green Party think that what we should really do with prisons is just shut them all. and let everybody out, because they don't do any good. And also Liam Halligan will be here, William Clouston from this SDP as well. But right now, Henry Bolton is with us, OBE. Henry, very good morning to you.
Thanks, Mike.
Very good to see you.
You too.
Lovely weather out there, which I'm afraid, and I know this probably is a sort of trigger for everybody now, but whenever the weather turns nice, once you've gone, it's really, really nice weather, you kind of go, oh, obviously now there's going to be hundreds of people coming across the channel, because it's going to be like a day out on the Serpentine.
I know, you can sit on the south coast and almost sort of watch them come over. Yeah. Sit there with your coffee and here they come.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's no sign, is there, of anything changing? I mean, we've got the Shabana Mahmood back end of March saying we have to get a new deal with the French. Yeah. Didn't get a new deal. £475 million later, she signs a cheque for, I think, 16 million to carry us over for the next couple of weeks, effectively.
It's a couple of months, but 2 million a week.
So why, one, is there no deal? And two, what is going to make the deal happen? And will the deal be any good?
Well, the reason there's no deal is because the French are completely convinced that the problem emanates from the UK.
Right.
That they've got a problem in northern France.
So we're like a magnet for people, in other words.
Yeah, because we are still attractive for these people. The French have got exactly the same opinion as I have, that these people would not be in the north of France, would not try to cross the channel, would not want to come to the UK if the UK was not an attractive destination. Yes. They only come here because this is where they want to be.
Right.
And as long as there are people who want to enter the UK in that way illegally, then of course organised criminality is going to try and meet that demand.
Yeah.
So you're going to continue. The only way of smashing the gangs or their business model is to remove the demand for their services.
Yes.
And the only way to do that is to make the UK an unattractive destination.
Yeah.
And that's what the French are completely convinced of that, as am I.
Is there any evidence that in Europe, for example, whether it's Greece or Italy or Spain or France, is there any evidence that they're kind of conquering this problem, or is it just as bad for them as it is for us?
They're bigger. I mean, the European Union is larger than us geographically, of course, and so the impact isn't quite the same. Proportionally, they have roughly the same number of people coming in, but they're sort of more dispersed in a sense.
Well, we're the only country that's got the density of population that we've got. Right?
Correct. So we feel it, we see it more. And the other thing is that partly because of historical links and partly because of policies of various governments in the past, we have got a predominantly Pakistani, Afghan, we've got a large proportion of people from that part of the world.
Yeah.
Now, they've got a different culture to, for example, people from Indonesia or people from somewhere like Syria.
Or Vietnam or something like that even.
Yes. So there are different cultures there. Now, people from those countries, they might have a different culture, but from places like Vietnam, but they will, generally speaking, make some effort to integrate.
Yeah.
What happens it is the Muslim culture of that particular region, of the Pakistani region and so on. They want to perpetuate and build and develop their culture here in the United Kingdom. And so we feel that is something that other European countries don't have. They have far, far fewer people from that part of the world.
And is that partly because there's already quite a lot of people here from that Pakistani community, so they tend to bring in more of their relatives?
Indeed, as I say, historical. So 1947, we partition India and Pakistan, India being Hindu, Pakistan, it wasn't Pakistan then, predominantly Muslim.
Yeah.
And what we wanted to do was limit the violence that would ensue when we stepped away. And we did limit it, but still hundreds of thousands have died. But what we also did was we opened the door then to people, a large, like we did with the Hong Kong Chinese, for example, opened the door to a large number of people from Pakistan, not just the UK, but also to places like East Africa, other colonies that we maintained. And then later they came from places like Kenya and Uganda
But it does seem to me
the
to
UK.
be very clear, and I think you're kind of saying it without saying it, that there are many communities and countries from where people come, where they come to this country, like, for example, say the East African Asians, the Gujaratis who came from Uganda. You know, they came here and they ran businesses. They opened shops, they opened laundrettes, they became accountants. You know, they basically built their own, you know, kind of families and subsidised themselves. And then you've got people, say, from Vietnam who come here and they work because that's all they know how to do. You know, but then we've got the two-child benefit cap being lifted, and we're told that many of the recipients of the two-child benefit cap will be unemployed foreigners who have come here with their children and who have got no intention of working and have never worked. And many of those are from Pakistan. Many of them are from places in Africa, like Eritrea, possibly Afghanistan. You know, there is a clear problem with some countries where people have come to Britain and they're just not working.
Correct. And we need to stop that.
Right.
And my view, this government will never do it because of the members of parliament that they've got and the constituency whose votes they rely on. But we need to actually say to the Pakistanis, no, you're not coming in.
Right.
And
you're not
get
bringing
a
your
visa.
7
and you're not
family
bringing
members.
your family members and so on. You know, the red list approach, which now is being picked up by a number of political parties, absolutely right. I think it needs to be deployed in a slightly more sophisticated way than it's being done, but that's sort of technical detail. But going back to the boats, one of the reasons that we feel that problem is because we have this community in the United Kingdom that absolutely insists on establishing the culture that it lived wherever they came from in the UK itself.
Yes.
That's a problem, and that's a problem that very few other European countries suffer from. But for the French, their argument is, look, why should we, because structurally, the other thing is that Shabana Mahmoud wants the French to establish a processing centre in France, which we would pay for, but it would be under French law, it would have to be French administered as a result. And the French are saying, look, you know, these people are going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming, keep coming, because you're making your country.
And that's going to be a further drain on the state, right?
It's going to be a further drain on us. But also, the French are going, why should we start setting up a solution that actually beds that system in? The way to deal with this is not a processing centre in France. The way to deal is not to patrol the beaches of the French coast, because, you know, even if we stop them, where are the guys? Where are these people going to go? That's a European Union problem.
And also, a processing centre would suggest that you're processing them with the view to allowing them in, as opposed to refuse them in.
But even if they refuse them, then even if they do refuse them, then it becomes a French problem to remove them. And the French are saying, why should we have that problem when the only reason that they're here in the first place is because you people make your country an attractive place? They're trying to get to you. They don't want to be here. They want to be, and the only reason that they're here in the north of France is because you muppets keep giving them all these benefits.
And you've spoken to me before about how you would sort of, you know, stop them from coming physically in terms of across the sea. But what would you do to disincentivise them from wanting to come?
I would detain
what would you say?
Securely every single one of them.
And just say, so when you land here, you don't get anything.
You don't get anything. You're in a detention facility until such time as we can remove you or you ask to go home. Because some of them logistically, so for example, at the moment, we're not going to be sending them back to Iran, for example.
So what do you do in that case then?
So in that case, you say you are detained securely until such time as you want to go.
So you're effectively under lock and key.
Correct.
In a detention centre.
And if you were to do that offshore somewhere, whether it's Ascension, or whether it's off the coast of Scotland.
Or even on a prison ship or something.
Prison ships have a limited capacity. This is something that could have happened. If we'd done that back in 2014-15 when they started coming across on the boats, they're mainly trucks, but the boats were starting to trickle through. What we should have done then is exactly that. And had we done that then, you would have had a deterrent. They wouldn't set foot effectively. They'd land in Dover and then be shunted straight to a detention ship or wherever. they wouldn't go anywhere else. There would be no benefits. They would be fed, they would get medical care and attention, and that's it. Until such time they go. Then they wouldn't come. There would be no benefit whatsoever.
Or they'd stay where they are in France, where they might take a view that actually it's not so bad here.
Well, I don't think they would even bother going as far as France.
Yeah.
I think they would, some of them wouldn't even try to get to Europe.
Yeah.
Because they come to Europe with the sole intention of coming to the United Kingdom or to Denmark or Sweden.
Any of them?
But they've done, the Danes have basically switched this off.
Sending them back, haven't they?
They have. And interestingly, we've got people crying foul here because, for example, Restore want to, they say, look, I don't care, even if you were born here, if you're not integrating and you're not contributing and you've got a foreign passport, you're out.
Right.
Well, the Danes have done exactly that.
Yeah.
And, that's changing the whole dynamic.
Have they actually deported people who were born there?
Somalia.
Right.
Back in December, I think, 5th of December.
Right.
There was a lad, 19 years old,
Couple
of criminal offences.
There since then.
Born there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was born in Denmark.
Okay.
To Somali parents.
So how do they get around the ECHR then? Because we get told all the time, well, we can't do that because of the ECHR.
Yeah, right. Well, again, back a few years ago, I said, look, if we set up our legal system in the correct way, we don't have to leave the ECHR. I support leaving the ECHR, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
but Denmark are in it, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, yes, but
so they don't have to leave it in order to do what they're doing.
They don't, no. And their whole legal sort of rationale is if you come to Denmark as an asylum seeker, it is because you're fleeing whatever, and that is temporary. You are seeking temporary refuge. That's the principle under Danish law.
Right.
And so whilst you're there, you are under, as a result, a whole load of different restrictions under Danish law, which are perfectly within the ECHR.
But again,
but we don't have the domestic law that enables us to, if you like, it doesn't close the gaps in the ECHR, but it very much narrows them, what Denmark has done.
But there are so many countries around the world where you can take an example from. For example, look at the Middle East, Dubai, right, where my daughter works, right? If you're not an Emirati, you literally don't really have any rights. No. You're allowed to go there, you're allowed to live there. If you have a job, that's fine, but you can't go there looking for a job. Yeah. And if you get there and you lose your job, you have 3 months to find another job or you're out. Simple as that. You don't have any right to stay there, no right to be a resident, doesn't matter how long you've been there. Same in America. You go there, I was there, I lived there for 10 years, but I was on a work visa. But, I never got a green card. I could have done if I wanted to. But even if you get a green card, you're a resident alien and you do not have the same rights as an American citizen. And until you become an American citizen, you don't have those rights. And they can kick you out any time. And so I think, to me, that's a perfectly reasonable
We've
scenario,
got this bizarre, bonkers idea, and I don't really know how it evolved, Mike, that if we're going to let somebody in to work for a particular job or whatever, then they're here for good. Yeah. As long as they keep their nose clean, reasonably,
and as long as they've got a job.
As long as they've got a job. And if
they lose the job, even if you go find another one, or else you're out.
Well, look, you go to anywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
If you've got a job there, I've worked in Europe in a number of countries. You've got a job there. You get your residency and you get your work authorizations of various sorts. Yeah. And fine, but if that job ends, you're out.
Yeah. And
you don't stay there.
Reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. And but why don't we do that? We've got an incredibly naive approach here.
Because you know why? We feel guilty in some ridiculous way. The establishment in this country, which is now left-leaning, obviously, has this kind of, shadow that it carries over its shoulder, where we go, we did some terrible things in the past. We really have to make up for that, and we have to give people sanctuary. We have to look after them. They've come here in terrible state. Absolutely, that's a cobblers.
It is. There are some very naive. There's a combination of things. There's some very naive people, a minority of people, certainly now, who are driving the agenda.
Yeah.
They are, they're sort of their allies, if you like, in this are people who have made or built a social, political, even financial status out of campaigning for these rights or those rights or the other rights. You've got these charities, NGOs or whoever, who are gaining public money to do, and in fact, many of now we know that some of the charities that are supporting the migrants when they come over here with legal advice are actually also advising the government on how to stop them. This is a total conflict, and they're funded by public money.
Grants,
correct,
in order to help them to continue to help other people to come and live here.
No other country does this. It's nuts. So we've got this alliance, if you like, of these activists who are benefiting from it. These incredibly naive people who, frankly, live in a little liberal urban elite bubble and actually think that people like me, who've been to these countries, who've actually dealt with refugee camps, dealt with refugee crises, and when I say these people are not refugees, let me show you. They don't want to know because A, it contradicts their agenda, but B, they simply think I'm a right-wing fascist.
Yeah, of course.
So, no, you've got no empathy, no sympathy, no nothing. Actually, I've dealt with these people. I've put my life on the line for these people, for the refugees, genuine refugees. But the people who come across on these boats, I see them. I live in Folkestone.
They're taking the piss. I mean, let's just be honest,
they are.
right?
But why not? If you can do it, why not? If there's a country there that's going to give you all these...
Part of me is like you. I don't actually blame the individuals for doing it. But we can't continue like this.
No,
we cannot allow ourselves.
Mugs for doing it.
Reading a piece in the Telegraph this morning in which it says that people now believe Britain is more divided than at any other time in its history, even worse than it was during the Brexit referendum. And
I tell you what,
there is a real undercurrent, I would say, of violence on the streets of this country. There is a real kind of, sense that that things are spinning out of control. With this two-child benefit cap being lifted, resentment is going to get higher because more and more of these, and I think there's a majority, I think we've seen statistics that have said, even from the Labour Party, that the majority of people benefiting from the extra welfare payment, £6,000 a year, are foreign, right? People who have come here from another country who have got more kids than most British people have. And, the bow is about to break.
Well, and now we've got this madcap scheme of, families who volunteer to go back. Some of them are going to get £40,000. The French will be coming for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll come over, then we'll get £40,000 and go back. I mean, it's not quite so simple, but we have got to get tough on this. There is no choice. And I tell you what, Mike, you say something's going to break. Some years ago, I had a bit of a fascination with the Civil War. Partly because I'm descended from branches of the family of Oliver Cromwell and a guy called Archbishop John Tillotson, who was, after the war, was the guy who sort of really did the political thinking about how to reconstruct the Constitution of the United Kingdom. And that's, so fascinating story. But a lot of the tensions, I mean, the world's changed, but a lot of the tensions in the country at that time, if you read that history about the political and religious concerns, the constitutional concerns, in the years, in the sort of the 10 years leading up to the Civil War, and you will be amazed at you won't be able to help yourself from identifying some similarities.
So parallels.
Yeah, some parallels. And I'm not saying that...
Like what, for example? Tell us.
Well, for example, you've got this argument that actually we're getting foreign influence from the Dutch and from others, foreign influence that is undermining our state. In that case, it was undermining what the consideration was that obviously the king ruled by divine right at that point. And what was happening was that coming into that mix were European ideas that were subversive in that they undermined that belief, and they also undermined the cohesion of the parliamentary relationship with the king and with society. So society was losing confidence in politicians. Politicians were unable to move because the king was immovable, and they drew. But
so sort of dissatisfaction.
It was a high level of dissatisfaction, breaking into factions, partly religious, factions within it was then the Christian Church, Catholicism, Presbyterianism, and so on. And so you've got these factions breaking out, just like you have now. On the left and the right, you've got the Greens, you've got Labour, you've got the Liberal Democrats. On the right, you've got different sort of approaches to things. And in the mix, you've got a loss of confidence in the centre. The centre becoming more and more authoritarian, as the King did. Increasing taxation, increasing regulation.
That's the thing, because people are feeling the pinch. And famously, it was Bill Clinton who said it's the economy stupid. But it is. You know, when times get tough and when money gets short and people feel that they're getting ripped off by the government, that's when it starts to get tricky.
You said earlier before I came on that there's about people would pay more taxation if they saw the benefit in doing it.
Yes.
Well, what they're seeing is what they saw in the 10 years leading up to the Civil War, which was an increase in central oppression.
Yeah.
And when I mean oppression, I don't mean authoritarian sort of Nazis marching down the street type of thing, the Gestapo. What I'm talking about here is people's lives were being regulated.
Yes.
They'd always lived in these little settlements, hamlets, agricultural sort of villages and so on, got on with their lives, went to their little church on a Sunday, were left alone to do their thing, a bit of taxation here and there. But then all of a sudden they were told how to pray, they were told when to pray, they were how they should express their religion, because it was a very religious society.
And now, of course,
they were being
some other people over there
more,
praying in a way that we don't even recognise.
Yeah, and they were taxed more, and there was all this. So what we're seeing now is that people are struggling. Businesses can't survive because the national insurance contributions have gone up for employers for all sorts of reasons. There are more and more regulation, the health and safety regulations that you name it.
Rights and all that,
now we've got we've got to fill out our tax returns, 4 times a year instead of once a year.
Right.
You've got then all the sort of DEI requirements on mainly the public sector.
Yeah.
So there's more and more regulation, oversight, and so on, which creates more and more jobs that the taxpayer. You were talking earlier about
which means we have to give them even more money to pay for all the people
so we're paying more and more,
hiring.
Increasing the civil service, the bureaucracy,
making government bigger.
And what do you do if you appoint somebody, for example, as a DEI advisor? Then they've got a job description. If they are moderately sort of interested in the job, they're going to work at it. They're going to try and do the thing that they're interested in doing and that they're being paid to do. So they push that agenda. So they impose on other people. You get it with the Quangos. You get it even in defence now. You've got all of these committees and so on that are saying, well, here's our strategy, here's our plan. And then everybody's going, oh, bloody hell. They're busy trying to fight the bureaucracy and the administration. This is what happened before the Civil War. Not to the same extent, but the population was not used to it.
I think a lot of people will recognise
and I'm not saying we'll have a civil war, but we could. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. And I just pray to God that this government doesn't make matters worse, which it could easily do, and that, come 2029 or whenever the next general election, we've got a party that comes in with not just headline, we'll do, because we're sick and tired of that. I am. Whatever party we've voted for, we'll do this, and this. And actually, everybody goes, thank God for that, a party that's going to do this, but actually has not had the plan to do it, not had the detail, not had the interest in the fine detail, so they haven't had the understanding to navigate Whitehall, to navigate the civil service, to reform the civil service, to undo all of this bureaucracy. You've really got to understand it, or you go to war with it. But if you go to war with it, then you're going to be fighting that war rather than delivering for the public.
And you've also got to know you're going to win the war, which is pretty difficult.
And if you don't have a plan for that war, well, then we'll find...
Well, look at Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings came in and he was going to have a bonfire with the Quangos. He was going to burn his way through the civil service in Whitehall, and he didn't get anywhere with it. In fact, worse than that, we've got more people now working in the civil service than ever.
Dom Cummings, you say, isn't a team player, and you can't do that on your own. You've got to have a good team around you, and you've got to prep the team before you get into that situation. But yes, I mean, we kind of all know roughly where the problems lie with borders. Sadly it's been boiled down to a very simplistic set of solutions. Deploy the Navy or do this or do that. I mean, things that are. I mean, we haven't got... When
we say the Navy now, can we just say the boat as
well,
opposed
there you
to
go.
the Navy?
Well, you see,
I
actually had this conversation with Richard Tice a while ago, and he said, "Well, you said we haven't got a plan," and I said, "Well, actually, Richard, I don't think you have." He said, "Yeah, we're going to leave the ECHR, which we discussed, which I agree with. And I said, but what are you actually going to do to you've got to have an operational reaction. He said, we'll put the Navy in the Channel. And I said, well, this is less than a year ago. And I said, what Navy?
Yeah.
We'll put a frigate or a destroyer. Just like that.
Right.
I mean, without having any cognizance whatsoever as to whether or not we've got any warships that you can do that with, and what other tasks they've got. So this is the attention to detail. Now, when I say these things, people think that I'm critical of the intention, of the aim. I am absolutely passionate that we have to stop these boats.
Yeah.
But if we're not paying attention to the detail and we've got the wrong plan, then whatever we set out to do will not work.
Yeah.
And if you decide the critical part of your plan is to deploy assets that you simply don't have. Then you come across a roadblock. And so people need to pay attention to detail. All the political parties do. And I'm afraid I don't see it happening yet. Thankfully, we're left with the Labour Party, but we've got 3 years probably to the next general election.
Well, I'm still hopeful that we get one before that because they'll make such a rick of it all.
I actually don't see how that will happen, given Labour's majority, because we're going to have around about 71 Labour MPs voting.
Well, just wait until the entire economy collapses around itself, and when you wake up in the morning, there's a bloke walking down the road with a suitcase full of money to go and buy a can of beans in the local kind of corner shop. That's when it will happen.
We're not far off that already.
No, we're really not. Great to see you.
When you last slept?
When did you last sleep? I'm asking.
I woke up at 6:30 yesterday morning.
What? So you've been awake since then?
I've been on the go ever since. I've not stopped.
This is the kind of sacrifice that people make to come on this show, I have to say. Final question, actually, gentleman's relish.
Yes.
Because we thought William Yarwood was a guy that might be in the market for gentleman's relish, but it turns out he doesn't actually like it and has never had it. Are you a gentleman's relish fan?
It's an acquired taste. I am, yes.
Because apparently it's all over. They're going to
I
stop
know,
producing
it's very sad.
What do you do with it?
Well, the best way to eat it, I think, toast, seeded toast, with a thin scraping of gentleman's relish on it.
Instead of butter?
Instead of butter, butter, and then scrambled egg over the top.
Oh, that sounds good.
And I also like to...
And is it sort of fishy? Is that the thing?
It is a bit fishy, but it's a bit fishy. It's more than anchovy. I don't know quite what's in it. I think the recipe's secret, but it's got a sort of
tangy.
It's got a bite to it as well.
Yeah,
it's tangy, but it's quite. Yeah, it's got
the sort of
quite
thing
a
I would
bite.
imagine.
It's quite sour.
I once spent the night at the RAC club, where they give you this really sort of strange arrangement whereby there's a sort of circular room and you go behind a curtain and there's a single bed and a place to hang it. It does, I know. Well, it gets worse because in the morning you wake up because there's no women allowed in the RAC club in the old days, and you get up and there's a Turkish bath scenario where men are just walking around naked, which I wasn't that keen on. But you go to breakfast, and I think I had kippers and poached eggs, one of my favourite breakfasts. That's the sort of place I would expect to find gentleman's relish. Because a very English kind of traditional thing.
There's a lot of English things, but Mike, we're back to the culture thing, aren't we? I'm keen on the whole national security thing. That's a different topic, but I genuinely believe that national security is not just guns and bullets and tanks and and the Russians and Chinese and whoever. National security is also preserving, protecting, defending, our history, our culture, our traditions, our constitutional way of life. It is, and anything that comes in from outside that threatens to undermine that. I think is a national security issue, because if you can protect all the material things, if you don't protect who you are, the identity of the nation, then
the identity's lost.
Then there's no point in protecting anything.
Exactly. And then what are you fighting for?
Correct.
Which is why we have a situation, and we've got to end it here because we've got other things to do. But it's great to have you and great to listen to your wise words. But also, when you now go to the young people of this country and you say, would you fight to preserve Britain? And they say no. Partly because they don't like what they see, partly because they don't know what Britain is, and partly because they don't know what we're supposed to stand for. And that's really a problem, I think.
I think it's a massive problem. But as you say, probably a conversation for another time. But that's about who we are, and whether you're looking at Brexit or anything else. Where is the politician saying, this is who we aspire to be. 20
or
years,
even just this is where we are. This is who we are.
This is who we are.
I know who I am.
And this is where we want to be in the future.
Yeah.
And this is how we're going to get there. It doesn't exist.
I know.
Well, there's one or two coming forward.
Yeah.
That's,
well, listen, go and get some sleep.
For the future.
I don't know what you'd be like when you've had sleep, because you're pretty bloody good without it, to be honest.
I can do about 3 nights without sleep, and then I crash.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Henry Bolton, OBE, what a guy. Fantastic. People are loving what you're saying as well. Really, really interesting. And thank you, as ever, for coming in. Good to see you. Considering Henry's been up for 24 hours, he's remarkably on the button, full of common sense, says Seaside Babe. Well, full of more common sense than old Keir Starmer. You know, I said that my principles say that I will be standing up for international law. How about you stand up for British people, you complete plonker? Shall we have an update on the poll, Pooch? We've got a poll going out at the moment on Keir Starmer after his ridiculous trip to the Middle East. Nobody knows why he went there, but he went to the Middle East yesterday, and we're not even sure if he's back. It turns out he was on holiday in Spain before he went there, but we've asked the question, what actually is Keir Starmer? Have we got it? Yeah, here we go. He's been touted as a statesman. What is he? Is he a statesman? Is he a liar? Is he a two-tier character? Or is he just a wanker? You know, this is what we can do on the new independent, unaffiliated.
Well, as a former diplomat, I think that's, you've got to be frank and straightforward. Strategic clarity, that's what this is about.
And it's all within international law, obviously. It's coming up to 13 minutes past 8, almost 14 minutes past 8, actually, on the international clock. We're going to be speaking to Jamie Jenkins coming up very shortly. I've just been sent a brilliant... I'm going to send this to you, Pooch. I don't think we can publish it, but a brilliant meme on the Straits of Hormuz. Somebody said last week, by the way, why is it always about the Straits of Hormuz? What about the gays of Hormuz? Why don't we rescue them as well? But that's another story. Coming up, let's get the news with the beautiful Fiona McLeod.
I'm Fiona McLeod. I'm standing in last minute as Edward Hughes has decided to take sudden leave. Edwina seems to think there is something going on between the two of us. I had already scheduled a short break to the Caribbean, so I don't know where she got that idea. Anyway, he's gone AWOL. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in Saudi Arabia today, meeting Gulf leaders, including Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Lovely Sir Keir says there's a lot of work to do to make the fragile US-Iran ceasefire permanent and reopen the Strait of Hormuz to stabilise global oil supplies. Back home, the 6-day strike by resident doctors in England enters its 3rd day. NHS bosses say services are holding up, but thousands of appointments have been postponed. That's the latest. More in half an hour. See you later, alligators.
Thank you very much indeed, Fiona. For those of you wondering where Edward Hughes is, we've put him on annual leave, basically, because the situation has not yet been resolved, if you don't mind me saying so. We will be joining, after 9:30, Richie and Rogue to find out what they know, because he came back yesterday, did Edward Hughes, and I was not prepared for that. I was not told about it. I had a massive row with the HR department after the show yesterday, and I said, what the hell do you think you're doing? You know, whatever you may think, and whoever you may think you are, this is still my show, and I have to have the final word as to who comes on as a guest, and who's reading the bleeding news, right? So I sort of threw a bit of a paddy. Is that allowed to, am I allowed to say that? A paddy? I don't think that's racist, is it? Anyway, so I had a bit of a paddy, and I said, look, you complete and utter tossers, you do as I tell you. And if I want Fiona McLeod to read the news, that's what she's going to be doing. And if I decide that she's going to be the permanent replacement for Edward Hughes, that's how it's going to go. And given the way that he has behaved, and he was a bit cocky yesterday as well, I think you'll find, I was not entirely impressed at all by the way that he comported himself or whatever. So the story continues, but we'll bring you more. Obviously, what you now know about this show is that we are here as the biggest YouTube breakfast show in the country, right? We've got more people watching us than watching any other show right now, whether it's ITV, whether it's Talk, whether it's GB News. Yeah, more people than ever watching this show on YouTube. And yes, they've always got, different places where they can watch and all of that, and I'll give them any number of credos for that. But the bottom line is that we are the biggest YouTube breakfast show in Britain, okay? So welcome to it, and very good news that you've joined us, and thank you very much indeed. 14 million views. In fact, we're almost at 14.5 million already, so it'll be 15 million soon. Edward's been on more holidays than Starmer, says Bavaria. Yeah, I know. Starmer was on holiday, apparently, last week. He was in Spain. I mean, what sort of a man, in the midst of a Middle Eastern crisis, where people have been asking questions about whether it's possible for Iran to actually fire missiles at Britain, which would actually hit Britain because they would have that range, right? What sort of maniac goes on holiday? You know, I've got conversations going on with my family where they're saying to me, can we go on holiday? And I'm like, well, I can't really go on holiday. I'm trying to set up a business. I'm trying to run a new show with Pooch. Best case scenario is Pooch and I'll go on holiday together and we'll do a show from wherever we are, which might happen. But as far as my kids are concerned, as far as their mother is concerned, I'm going, we can't do it. You can go. You go. Don't worry. I'll pay for it. But what I'm not doing is going, right, what the hell is the Prime Minister of this country doing going on bleeding holiday to Spain with his miserable wife and his 2 or possibly 3 children? What's that all about? Anyway, never mind. Sorry for the rant. I'll come back to that. We are going to do a bit of a meltdown at some point soon as well. And we're going to do that on Greta Thunberg, who's reared her ugly head again, it has to be said. And it's getting uglier, by the way. She now looks about, 38 as opposed to 8, which she used to look. And she's now decided she's a campaigner for Iran. Brilliant, isn't it? Very nice. But let's talk now, before we do anything else, to Jamie Jenkins, our favourite Welshman from Welsh Wales, our favourite statistician as well. Jamie, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. I'm thinking of starting a march for Edward Hughes in Wales, Mike. We get a bit concerned down here in Wales that these media, big organisations up in London are kind of abusing our Welsh news readers. This is the second one, I think. Now we're the BBC.
Yeah,
now we got you, Mike. So
the trouble is that on the statistics alone, Welsh news readers haven't got a great many things to recommend them to the general public. I mean, Hugh Edwards has kind of queered the pitch, if you don't mind me saying so, for an awful lot of people.
No, I know. I was going to apply for a job as a newsreader in London, Mike, but I think as soon as they hear my accent, I'll be blacklisted straight away.
Exactly right. Let's start with the weather, because we had a little conversation yesterday online about the nice weather turning in. Probably the very, very high likelihood that there'll be more people coming over on the small boats than ever. I saw, bizarrely, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Ashford Labour Party, which is down in Kent, put out a tweet in which they said, it's happened, we've stopped the boats, because they did that thing where they went, last week, 0 boats, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, no boats at all, which of course happens from time to time because the weather dictates it and the tide dictates it, and if there's no feasible way to cross the channel, they just don't come. But of course, it turns out that wasn't the end of the story, because the following, I think, 2 days later, about 500 people came over.
Yeah, Mike, as you just speaking with Henry, there's thousands in northern France waiting to come over on the beaches, and so we've seen, I think, nearly 300 in the last couple of days. Quite low numbers for the weather, but I would imagine, as you say, what the BBC need to do, Mike, when they're doing their kind of Met Office weather report each night, if you've got those big kind of yellow suns down in the south east there, you can pretty much say it's going to be a magnet for attracting more people over the channel. So I think with the numbers that have come over in the last couple of days, that'll knock us over 5,000 for the year, and we'll talk a couple of stories about taxpayers' money, but that's going to cost us about 5 billion. But the story that I picked up on this one as well, Mike, this week was apparently now the Border Force have spent £30 million on 4 new catamarans.
Oh, yeah.
And what they're doing here, Mike, is they obviously coming from the English side of the channel. They got these 4 new kind of boats, these catamaran boats, much more luxurious than they were. They're now going into the channel to rescue more of these people. So, we're spending money on our side to give an even better journey to these people. Remember, what do? They come halfway over. As soon as they get halfway, we go and pick them up. It's like a taxi service.
Well, that's the thing. Well, Christian Drogan, one of our guys who works for Watchmen, over in Calais, he did a report for us just last week in which he said, this idea that the government's saying we're not only clamping down on the arrivals, but we're also destroying all the boats. He found a whole sort of a collection of boats which clearly hadn't been destroyed after the fact that when they said they had been, and he also found that there was now quite a lot of commercial fishing operators who are now doubling up as rescue services for these people who are not in need of rescue. And so it's not just Border Force that are now bringing them in, but it's commercial operators who are getting paid money by the Home Office to bring these characters into port.
No, ridiculous. And I thought, talk Starmer going on holiday. Remember his little jolly to China a few minutes back? He claimed that the Chinese were going to stop these boats being produced.
I know.
Absolute nonsense. So yeah, this is just a story that's going to run and run and run. And Mike, I woke up this morning, I thought you had Keir Starmer in the studio with you this morning, Mike, with old...
He's good, isn't he? He's very good.
Brilliant ones. But we haven't heard the term smash the gangs for a long time. The gangs aren't smashed. We're just continuing to smash the number of people coming over on this country that we're going to have to pay for.
And all we've got is the French making hay while the sun shines, if you like. Saying to Shabana Mahmood, well, the deal for us to stop them coming has run out. So if you want us to stop them coming still, which they haven't done ever, you give us another 16 million quid, which will last for what, 4 weeks or something?
Yeah, we chucked a couple of some more millions over to France, I think, last week as a last-minute deal whilst we negotiate something a bit more long-term, Mike. But it's just money, money, money. The one thing I think Margaret Thatcher said many, many years ago, you've got to remember now, is the government doesn't have any money, Mike. All this money that we talk about, 30 million for these catamarans, 17 million to the French, billions on a 2-child cap being lifted. Green Party, we'll talk about them in a second, got the magic money tree if they ever get in. The government hasn't got any money. They rely on taxing us.
Yeah.
And we're seeing an ever-increasing amount of taxpayers' money being wasted in this country and an ever-increasing taxpayer bill with fiscal drag. More and more people going to work. Well, you can't afford to go on holidays. You said you've got to build your show up.
Yeah, right.
And when you build your show up, Mike, and you get your income in from YouTube, you're going to have to probably have a massive tax bill off the back of that because your taxes are going up. So the government's got no money. They need to realise that. And if the government run the country like you run your household, they'd have to cut some stuff that they're spending money on now, Mike. It's just a waste of taxpayers' money on this system.
Exactly right. Let's talk a bit about a waste of taxpayers' money. The 2-child benefit cap. You've been looking into that. We know, for example, that an awful lot of the people who are going to be beneficiaries, I think the majority of people who are being beneficiaries are people who were not born in this country, people who have moved here with large families who are going to be now in receipt of something like 6,500 quid a year, which will make them an awful lot better off. It's about 500 quid a month, though, isn't it?
Yeah, so overall, obviously, the vast majority of people in the country are white British. So when you look at this, you will see most of the money will go to British families, Mike. But that doesn't tell the full story here. So you need to look at it in relation to the relative size of the populations. And the Children's Commissioner did a report a couple of years ago. And what a 2-child cap originally did, I think George Osborne brought it in under the Conservative government about 2017, I think around that time. The whole purpose of this was, the state cannot continue to pay more and more benefits to families who decide to have more and more and more children. So they put a 2-child cap in, which basically meant you only got benefits related to the children for the first and the second child. So that came in. And again, this wasn't one of those things in the Labour manifesto, but they've talked about cutting the benefits bill, Labour. And what have they done? They've done the complete opposite. They've increased the benefits bill. And then the Children's Commissioner report looked at kind of different ethnicities of different families and what proportion of those families have, say, 3 or more children, because then you're going to benefit from the cap. And so white British families, around 14% of white British families have 3 or more children. But then you compare that to, say, Pakistani families, it's 41%. Not 14, it's 41%. And then Bangladeshi families, 38%. So it brings that moral question, because the government are arguing now, Mike, that this is reducing child poverty. Obviously, if you put more money into the bank accounts of families who've got more children, that could be one of the outcomes if the money gets spent on the children. But, the moral question here, Mike, is if some families around the country are planning, so they might have one child, they might have 2 children, and they think, I can't afford a 3rd child. So families who are planning on what they can afford to pay, should they then have to pay more tax to fund other people's families who don't consider that? That's the moral question here, Mike. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's costing £2.3 billion in the next financial year. That's going to rise by the end of the decade to £3 billion. And you're right, it's about 560,000 families will benefit from this by the end of the decade, about 5,300 quid overall. Right. So it's not cheap. It's not, and morally, Mike, on one side, they'll say it reduces child poverty, but well, you're a taxpayer now, Mike. Do you think it's morally right that you should be paying for normal families?
But this is the problem. Because again, it's a bit like, the argument about King Charles and whether or not you should make an Easter message. It wouldn't matter so much if he didn't make any religious references to anything whatsoever. But the fact that he does make religious references to other religious festivals like Eid, like Ramadan, you go, well, why aren't you doing the Christian one, which you're meant to be the head of the church of? Similarly with this, if the government did have its own money, if the government was just being helpful to people and kind of trying to rescue them from poverty, that would be one thing. But for them to take the money from you and I, who are struggling because we're worse off than we were this time last year because of all the higher taxes, to pay people who are doing nothing, that's completely wrong. I didn't sign up for that. I did not, tick a box at the last election in which it said I, as a taxpayer, would be more than happy to have more of my money delivered to people who don't make any, on the basis that they've chosen not to make any. None of these people are unemployed out of anything other than choice. They're unemployed because they don't want to work.
Yeah, and the big problem you got, Mike, is many people who voted Labour in the last election, they didn't vote for this either. Right. Most of the like digital ID, all these different policies that the Labour Party have come in, but it could be worse, Mike. So if you look at the polls, obviously Labour tanking, Reform are kind of hovering around. I think the Tories, but the Green Party's surging at the moment. And the one thing that so in Wales we've got this election coming up, which means that some of these parties that are going well in the polls have to release manifestos. And the Green Party have released theirs this week, Mike. And literally, it's another war on the motorists. And the thing that was quite stark for me, this is kind of looking at the Green Party's UK national one last week, is they're claiming now, Mike, of introducing 55-mile-an-hour speed limits on motorways.
Yeah.
Because that's going to increase fuel efficiency. They're also saying they want you to retake your driving test every 5 years. Well, I thought people couldn't even get a driving test because of the backlog at the moment. Imagine millions of people have to do that every 5 years.
Well, guess who gets to jump to the top of the queue on the driving test front?
Who's that, Mike?
Illegal migrants. They started doing it in Folkestone. I don't know how many other parts of the country are doing it, but in Folkestone, I remember getting a call from somebody who said, you can't get a driving test down here, but if you come here as an illegal migrant, one of the things they give you is free driving lessons and a free booking so you can get a driving license. It's unbelievable.
No, and it wouldn't surprise me, Mike. Obviously they get their free kind of dental care, free health checkups and things. Everything's free. Everything's free, but the term free, whenever you see a government minister or any politician issue, we're going to have free childcare, free whatever. Remember, it's not free.
It's not free. No. Well, it's like Sadiq Khan and Starmer, who talks about free breakfast clubs and free school meals. They're not free. We're all paying for it.
Totally, Mike, totally. And just a few other things before we go on the Green Party. So basically, they want to put rent controls into Wales as well now. So if you've got your own property, they're going to say you can't increase the rent. So what happens there, Mike? If you can't increase the rent, well, the maintenance goes down or fewer rental properties come on the market. The utter lunacy of these lefties, Mike. You thought Starmer was bad. The Green Party are kind of Starmer on steroids, which is even worse. And the thing is, people will say, well, they're never going to get in. But in Wales, Mike, we've got this new voting system where none of the parties are going to win an outright majority. So Plaid Cymru, they're going to release their manifesto today. That'll be a barrel of laughs when I read that one later. Right. They won't get a majority. They're leading in the polls, but the Green Party might surge in with about 10 seats in Wales, which could be that they're the kingmakers to decide, if we want...
And that's what went wrong. And that's what went wrong in Scotland, because the reason that Scotland went completely sort of woke and crazy over COVID and over all sorts of other things and over the whole gender misappropriation problem, which ended up with Nicola Sturgeon losing her job, is because they had to get into bed with the Greens, and this guy called somebody Harvey, was it Paul Harvey? Can't remember his name. Anyway, he was this literal kind of communist, and Patrick Harvey, I think his name was, and he had to become he wasn't the deputy first minister, but he was very high up in the kind of coalition government. And when you get these nutters in government, they start to make ludicrous and ridiculous choices. Talking of Cardiff and Wales, I don't know if you heard William Yarwood talking earlier about the car business there and the anti-car legislation coming in, where they're going to start charging you more money to park a car if it's considered to be a gas guzzler, or if it's considered to be an SUV, or considered to be a heavier car than other cars. So they're going to have a two-tier kind of car system where if you've got a little car, you won't pay as much to park it as if you've got a big car.
Yeah, and it's just this massive war on the motorists, Mike. And who runs the council here in Wales, in Cardiff? It's the Labour administration as well, Mike. So it's a complete war on the motorists. You talk spot on there about what happened in Scotland. We had a Lib Dem politician. They've only got one current Lib Dem politician in our Welsh Parliament, Mike. But they needed that one extra vote to get kind of legislation through. She managed to get greyhound racing banned in Wales. Nobody's asking for it. But yeah, so so that's now banned. It's against the law to have greyhound racing in Wales because
that's unbelievable.
Decided, if I'm not going to sign off your kind of legislation on what you want to do unless you ban greyhound racing.
Yeah. But this is the thing, and people say, minority party, la-di-la-di-la. So I'm worried about London as well, because London election's coming up, not for the mayor, but certainly for all the other boroughs in London. And the Greens are likely to do pretty well because of all these nutty kids who think that, it's a great idea to vote for the Greens because they're going to save the planet. And then you've got all the nutty Muslims who are going to go, they're in favour of, free Palestine, so we'll vote for them. And, the next thing you know, if you've got the Greens taking over, a council in London, because they've got all different, obviously smaller councils like Southwark and Lambeth and, Hammersmith and Cheltenham and Fulham and all that, you could suddenly find yourself living in a council borough where you're not allowed to drive your car, say, between the hours of 8 and 6 on a Sunday or something. I mean, it could be that,
Well, Mike, I think the only good thing about the Green Party, if they come in and start running swathes of London, is you're going to have to take your show, you and Pooch, you're going to have to migrate down to the south of France. Perhaps you can take one of those small boats back the other way.
We've got a plan, we've got to take one of the boats the other way, and we're going to head off into, it would be like sort of Radio Caroline, do you remember? One of those kind of, sort of pirate radio stations, and we just do it off the coast of Britain, from a boat. I would do that, wouldn't you? Oh, that'd be great. Take the money.
Before I go today, Mike, as well, I've got a couple of tips for people as well. So people are always talking about listening to your show on adverts and stuff. So if you, and this is I'm not being paid by Google or anything for this, but if you go on YouTube Premium, obviously you can watch your show with no adverts whatsoever. But a good little hack, Mike, if you've got your family all of different kind of Spotify and all these different things, if they literally just get a family version of YouTube Premium, you can have your children, your partner, your mum, your dad, they can literally all share YouTube Premium for you, very, very cheap cost. So that's why I do, because I've never seen any adverts when I'm watching your show, Mike. So when people say, adverts keep popping up, that's a good little hack to get it all get over on.
Pooch is nodding in agreement, saying he's got that. But of course, the other thing about, and I know it's annoying for people, but you've got to remember as well that because we're an independent organisation, the adverts actually keep us, afloat. Because if we didn't make any money doing what we do, we wouldn't be able to do it. Simple as that. We sit in a studio here, which we have to pay for. They get business rates which go up about every 2 hours. That we have to pay the local council for. Pooch doesn't work for nothing. He's very expensive, very highly trained. Me the same. Charlotte also. So I'm sorry for people who don't like the adverts, but do bear with us, because if we didn't have them, we wouldn't be here.
No, totally, Mike, totally. You can pop over to your Substack as well. And so all the stuff I've been talking to you as well this morning, Mike, if people just check Stats Jamie into Google, or they'll find my kind of website, Substack as well, Mike. So if everybody watching this morning can get over and subscribe to me as well, they can get all my ramblings straight to them every single week for free as well, Mike. So
great stuff.
Keep up the good work, Mike. All your guests keeping us all entertained every morning. So keep
it's
it up.
Good stuff, isn't it? Pooch is asking, what's your latest Substack about? What's the chosen subject?
Well, Mike, that's all about the Green Party lunacy. I'll probably, if you're in Wales, I'll do a few things specifically on what's going on for this Welsh election. And yesterday was all about this 2-child cap. And I'm going to do one probably, Mike, as well soon on, because if you think about all these people coming over on boats, one of the things we've talked about in the past as well is that if you talk about the asylum systems overall, the majority of people come from Pakistan. So they come here legally originally, and then they decide, we don't want to go back because our visas run out. We can actually basically claim asylum. But I'm probably going to dig in some numbers on, when you look at the ONS data on where people go on holiday, Pakistan's quite a common country. So we've got loads of people claiming asylum in this country, but loads of people seem to go to Pakistan on holiday. And I thought the whole point of claiming asylum is it's not very safe to go there. So I'll probably do a little article on my Substack on that one in the next week.
Yes. Very good idea. Brilliant stuff. Jamie, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Jamie Jenkins there, our favourite statistician. I followed Jamie on Substack, says somebody whose name... Who was it? Seaside Babe. Yeah, Seaside Babe, very active today. Good to see you, darling. Thank you very much indeed. Which seaside, I wonder? I wonder if you tell me. I saw a few other super chats coming in as well over the course of the last one. We're here from Seaside Babe. Keeping what you earn isn't evil. Others demand that you fund their life through taxes is. I agree with that. There's a great one that came in earlier on. Stop buying French products. MG's a legend, says LTL. There's a great one that came in from Trent in America. Did you see that one? There we go. This is fantastic. This is Trent. He goes, my wife woke up just now and caught me sitting with the cat at 3 a.m. watching a British news show. She said loudly with a confused look, we live in North Carolina in the United States. It's gone again. You bring it back. I can't finish it. It's in the United States. And he goes, LOL, the cat's on my side. So yeah, Trent, listen, welcome to the greatest breakfast show in the history of breakfast shows. And welcome to British radio / television, which is what we do. The Mike Graham Show, obviously available to you from 7 to 9:30 every single weekday morning. And also, plans that we have, we've been talking about this for a while, but we will be moving on it soon. Get Donald to read the news, says something wickedly. The news is coming up very shortly, by the way. And
if they want to see him, he'll be at the live show.
Donald will be at the live show. What about Fiona McLeod? Will she be there?
That's up to HR.
Yeah. Well, you know, listen, I'm all in favour of Fiona McLeod. I think she's a loyal and very, very professional newsreader, and I like the idea of her coming to the live show. Lewis McLeod will be there. Right Said Fred will be there. Carol Decker from Tipau. Stephen Barrett will be there. Russell Quirk will be there. Will Geddes will be there as well. We'll also be entertained by Chris Walkie, who is, of course, our man with the fizz. He's going to be knocking around later on today because we're going to do Plonk of the Week in the company of William Clouston, who's the leader of the SDP. So that'll be good. We won't necessarily have him opening any bottles. We don't need to. Plonk filming today, right? Pooch, who will be on it? Trophy Yellow smiling. Yeah, well, I've just said William Clouston will be here for that. I'm not sure what the theme is today, but it will be as good as it always is, hopefully. We're also doing Plank of the Week as well, for which there are many, many decent nominations. For right now, though, let's get Fiona McLeod with the news headlines.
Good morning. I'm Fiona McLeod. I'm standing in last minute as Edward Hughes has decided to take sudden leave. Edwina seems to think there is something going on between the two of us. I had already scheduled a short break to the Caribbean, so I don't know where she got that idea. Anyway, he's gone AWOL. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in Saudi Arabia today, meeting Gulf leaders, including Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Lovely Sir Keir says there's a lot of work to do to make the fragile US-Iran ceasefire permanent and reopen the Strait of Hormuz to stabilise global oil supplies. Back home, the 6-day strike by resident doctors in England enters its third day. NHS bosses say services are holding up, but thousands of appointments have been postponed. That's the latest. More in half an hour. See you later, alligators.
And so, here we are. It's 8:40, not only on the clock behind me, but also on the international clock as well. That's uncanny, isn't it? Have you seen that? They're both showing the same time. I don't think I've ever seen that before, Pooch. Has something happened? They're both on the same time. That's really eerie. I wonder if that was the case yesterday, because I don't remember that. So it's saying 8:40. Do you know, by the way, I noticed yesterday that I hadn't changed the clock on, 1, the microwave, and also 2, on the cooker, right? So this morning, I don't know why, I decided to do it, fix it. At the early hours, I woke up at sort of 1 o'clock or something, and I thought, I know, I'll fix the clocks on the cooker and on the microwave. And the cooker was fine. I actually remembered how to do it, which was surprising. And then I thought I knew how to do the microwave one as well, and I did that. But when I got up this morning at 5, as is the time when I wake up when the alarm goes off, I walked into the kitchen, and the cooker clock was absolutely spot on, said 5 o'clock. For some reason, the microwave clock said that it was 2:40, not 5 o'clock. And I don't know what I did wrong. So I think I fixed it, but I won't know till I get home, because I sort of messed around with it again and put it to what I thought was the right time, so we'll see. I don't know whether you've had the same problem. But of course, we know it's one of the most annoying things. Is if your clock doesn't move automatically, it's like, oh man, do I really have to do this twice a year? Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, listen, my meltdown today is about somebody I haven't spoken about actually for quite a long time. Somebody who used to be in the media almost every day. Somebody who was this kind of iconic figure, a totem, you might say, for everything that was good in the world. Somebody who nobody could ever criticise unless they wanted to be described as a misogynist or a sexist or a bully or a horrible, horrible person. I'm talking, of course, about Greta Thunberg. Have a look at this.
The President of the United States just said that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. The President of the United States just said that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. And no one is reacting. This speaks for itself. What the fuck is anyone even doing at this point? We have normalized genocide, total annihilation of entire people, the systematic destruction of the biosphere which we are all depending on to survive, and that corrupt, racist war criminals can act with complete impunity. But even though we have allowed far too much so far, it is not too late to say stop. If we don't, we shouldn't fucking be able to call ourselves human.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you are human, sweetheart. She doesn't look human, does she? She looks like one of those things that crawls out from underneath a hobbit, in a garden somewhere. I don't know why she has to swear like that. I don't know why she thinks that's big and important. But there she is, like all the other tossers the other night, claiming that there's going to be an annihilation of a civilization. Why? Because they believe what Donald Trump says when they want to believe what he says. Most of the time, they don't believe a word he says. Most of the time, they say, Donald Trump doesn't mean what he says. He talks rubbish. He says he's going to do something, then he doesn't do it. He's always chickening out. He never says what he's going to do and then does it. He always says what he's going to do and then doesn't do it. Except on this occasion, because he said he was going to wipe out the civilization of Iran, they all got back on their hind legs and went, oh, no, he's a horrible war criminal. He's a horrible man. Lock him up. Put him behind bars. Never mind what the Iranians have done. Never mind the fact that the Iranians have killed women because they allowed somebody to see their hair. Never mind that they shot women in the back of the head with rifles when they were demonstrating against the government. Never mind the fact that they hang people from cranes for either being gay or for doing something that they think is in some way an admission of guilt, which isn't necessarily criminal, right? And how about that? Climate change, Palestine. Last time we saw the doom goblin, she was on that boat, wasn't she? The peace boat to Gaza, where they loaded it up with a load of food because they were supposed to be delivering it to the poor, hungry refugees in Gaza. Problem is every time you see the poor, hungry refugees in Gaza, they're all quite well fed. They're actually quite fat. They're not thin because they're not suffering from a lack of food. They're having a bad time, yes, of course. But maybe if they didn't want to have such a bad time, they shouldn't go around murdering Israelis, blowing them up, killing them, raping them, setting fire to their houses, shooting their dogs, right? She was on the what was the name of that ship? They had a name, didn't it? It was the Gaza Peace something or other. It turned out, anyway, that they loaded it up with food, but when they got to anywhere near Gaza, which they weren't allowed to get too near because the Israelis actually stopped them going there, quite rightly, in my view, they'd eaten half the food. So, all these virtue signalling sort of Norwegians and Swedes and, people from Britain, people from, Western European cultures where everything's fine and dandy and nobody has to worry about anything. And they're on this boat and they're taking food to people who apparently are starving. And they ate half the food. Well, that tells you all you need to know, doesn't it? So they didn't starve. They didn't put themselves through any kind of sacrifice. But then they claimed that they'd been arrested by the IDF and they were held and made to do terrible things. Well, not as terrible as the things that Hamas made them do under the streets of Gaza when they held women and children and old people and pensioners for months and months and months and months, raping them, torturing them, burning them, killing them. The Middle East is a hellhole. There's no question about it. Yeah, of course, there are some parts of it that you might want to go and live in and work in. I spoke to somebody yesterday who's moving to Dubai. They said it's a great time to move there because everybody's believing. Well, it is, and it's a lovely place to be, and I know it quite well. But, you know, it's not Western Europe. You don't have the same rights there as we have here. And if you want to go and live in Gaza, good luck to you. But what is Greta Thunberg all about? She's a pathetic, hopeless, useless individual. Don't forget, she's the same person who said the world was going to end in 2022 if we didn't do anything about the climate crisis. Well, here we are, and it's now 2026, 4 years on. So she was wrong about that, wasn't she? As she is about so much. And all I can say is that her parents ought to be thoroughly ashamed of themselves for allowing her to become this sort of poster child for autism and for mania and for ludicrous causes that have no point, including Palestine, including climate change, and including now Iran. She doesn't have much to say about the IRGC. She doesn't have much to say about Hamas, does she? Or Hezbollah, or the people that are given money to terrorise their populations. Nothing to say about the ghastly, horrible nastiness that went on October the 7th, 2023. None of that. So I'm afraid, Ms. Thunberg, you are a waste of bloody space. I'm not even going to waste swear words on you. You complete and utter fool. So, here we are. Should we have an update on the poll? I think the polling question is about Keir Starmer. He went to the Middle East yesterday. I'm not sure if he's back yet. I haven't actually checked. Maybe I should check to see whether or not he's actually tweeted anything out this morning. Because, you know, normally a day does not go by when he doesn't tweet something. But we're asking this question. Starmer is being touted as a statesman around the world. I'm not sure who's touting him as that, apart from his own PR people. What is Keir Starmer, though, actually? Is he a statesman? Only 1% of you think that. Whoever you are, you're fired. You shouldn't even be listening to this show. A liar, 23%, yes. Two-tier, no question at all, that's only 4%. But by far and away at the moment, with 3,758 votes cast, normally we get about 6,000, so do add your numbers, please do it. A complete and utter wanker. Yep, I apologise for the swear words. I know that some of you don't like it. Some of you say, oh, I've got children listening. I know, but occasionally, you know, there is a chant, there is a universal chant that goes on now at every sporting occasion that you would care to mention, in which everybody just gets together and sings, Keir Starmer's a wanker. And that's what they do, because that's what he is. He's completely and utterly hopeless. Let me just check and see whether he's put anything out lately. Keir Starmer, he's number one on my Twitter list. No, he hasn't. I mean, 18 hours ago was the last tweet he put out, in which it says, the 2-week ceasefire between the United States and Iran today is welcomed by the UK and our allies. The goal now must be a lasting end to the war. Alongside our international partners, the UK will work to ensure a return to freedom of navigation in the Straits of Hormuz. Yeah, well, ever since he said that, apparently the Straits of Hormuz have been closed again. So well done, Sir Keir. Absolute plonker. Now, let us talk some more about the Green Party, because only yesterday, I think it was, that we played the clip, Pooch, wasn't it? From this woman in Scotland who apparently is a member of the Green Party. I'm not sure if she's an MSP or whatever. But she basically said that Green Party policy, should they be elected, would be to completely and utterly change the system in which we imprison people, and effectively to just do away with prisons because they don't work. Now, I'm going to speak to a very thoughtful woman called Vanessa Frake, who is a former prison governor, and who will probably say to me, well, it's not as simple as that, Mike, is it? And of course it's not as simple as that. But yes, prisons don't work, but you can't just do away with them. Vanessa, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good
Thanks
to
for
see
having
you.
me on.
Yeah, I mean, the Green Party are mad, right? We know that. And I know that they'll probably say, we didn't mean we were going to shut them all together. We just know that they don't work. And I mean, there's some truth to the fact that they don't work. But equally, there's some truth to the fact that if we lock people away who are dangerous, that is a benefit to the rest of society, isn't it?
Well, of course it is. Look, this is another spouting from the Green Party with their rose-tinted glasses. You know, wouldn't it be fabulous to do away with prisons, not have any crime? But unfortunately, this woman hasn't looked at the facts. And the facts are, Mike, that our reoffending rates are currently round about 28.9% of adults. the latest figures for recalls to prison, those that have been released out on license, are now in December was over 5,000 people were recalled to prison, which that is more than 1/3 of the total recalled in the entire year to June 2025.
Right.
Now, you know, I'm not saying that prison is the answer for low-level crime, but certainly our community services are not up to they're not robust enough. They're not up to the job of reducing reoffending in any shape or form.
Right.
And to spout something like that, I mean, I'm not quite sure whether she's doing it just for effect or actually they actually mean it. It's very difficult sometimes to tell the Green Party.
Well, so far we've got the Green Party's manifesto as they've told us it will be, which is to have no borders at all, apart from in Palestine, where they carry their own state, to have no illegal drugs, so that every drug is now legalised, to have no prostitution laws, so that, you know, you can have brothels and everybody can do what they want. And basically, you know, it's a sort of free-for-all. And it doesn't make any sense. And now the latest one is we don't have any prisons. But if you know, imagine a situation where you couldn't lock people up, what would you do with them?
Well, look, you know, the first point of a prison is to protect the public. That's the first point of what a prison should do. And there are many violent sexual offenders, rapists, murderers, child abusers. You know, the list is endless who should be locked up and locked up for some considerable time.
Right.
And I just, quite honestly, I'm not sure they're even worth my breath, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. It really is bizarre, isn't it? But I mean, given their sort of intervention here, obviously we do know that prisons and prison spaces are a very short supply. Are there any prisons actually being built currently by Labour? Because I'm not clear what Labour's position even is.
Well, when Shabana Mahmood was the Justice Minister, all for 6 months, she instigated 3 new builds, but these aren't going to be online until, you know, 2030 or beyond. You know, and we all know the price of things goes up, and then the cuts come, and builders go out of business, which has happened several times with the prison service. So I'm not hanging hope, but there are apparently ones in the pipeline. But you know, I mean, to be honest, they've got no real handle on our prison crisis. You know, it just goes from crisis to crisis, and with Lammy in charge now, you know, I mean, I don't really hold up that much hope, Mike.
No, exactly. But that is the problem, though, isn't it? From time immemorial, I suppose, and you and I talked about this a lot. There's no kind of joined up thinking. There's nobody going into Parliament today or walking into Downing Street and saying, do you know what, Prime Minister, if we started building 3 prisons today at 10 o'clock, put spades in the ground, you know, in about 3 years' time, we might have capacity to put another, say, 15,000 people in prison, or 10,000 people, or whatever the number would be. But nobody seems to do that. It's almost like they don't think far enough ahead. They kind of go, we've got a prison crisis. I know, let's let a load of people out and then put a load of other people in. And then
it'll be interesting, Mike, to know those people that they let out last September, how many of those reoffended, and how those figures aren't out yet, and I'm sure they're being kept well under wraps, and how many were recalled to prison.
Because from what you said earlier, there's more than likely to be quite a large proportion of them recalled, right?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt, because they weren't ready to be released.
No. And what happens in the case where they've let people out and then they filled that spot with somebody else who's gone in, and then they have to recall the person they let out? Where do they go?
Well, it's a roundabout, isn't it? You know, they'll let somebody else out who's not ready to be released, and that's how it goes, Mike. You know, it's a dreadful situation, and you know, we should be ashamed of it, really, that we've let it get like this.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And again, we know, for example, I think there's 12,000 people from overseas who are locked up in our prison system, who it would be very simple, surely, to let go and repatriate to whichever country they come from. And that would create a huge space for us.
Well, I think, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah, it would be if there wasn't the Human Rights Act that, we religiously follow in this country. And human rights lawyers who get involved. Obviously, it's a huge paycheck for them, and these things drag on. I've known people who are awaiting deportation be held 3 or 4 years at £55,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it? And David Lammy, who's now the Justice Minister, what's he doing exactly?
Answers on a postcard. Yeah, that's Barry.
Is that Barry?
That's Barry. Yeah.
Barry's a great name for a cat. I love that. Brilliant. Does Barry do any tricks?
He used to, but he's 15 now, so he's very slow.
You're right. Brilliant. I know the feeling. It sounds familiar. Vanessa, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Vanessa Frake there talking to us about the commonsensical version of why we need more prison spaces and why it's a complete and utter nonsense to think that by letting people out of prison, somehow that is a safeguard for the rest of the public, because at least by the sounds of it, 1/3 and possibly 2/3 of them who get released need to go back in because they've reoffended. I mean, it's not rocket science, this stuff, is it? Unbelievable. Liam Halligan's here. And I'm delighted to say, Liam, I haven't seen you for a while, so welcome back.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to be with you.
The home of common sense. Are we doing news, or should we just bypass that? We're not going to bother with news. We don't need news. We've got Liam Halligan. What the hell do we need news for? Also, there isn't any news, to be honest. I mean, Keir Starmer's gone to the Middle East. Nobody knows why. The one boat that we did have that was doing the rounds, HMS Dragon's been recalled into the dry dock for being fixed. I guess what we could talk about, though, is the effect of the peace deal, ceasefire deal on the markets, which appear to have slightly recovered. I actually had, I drummed up the courage to look at my pension yesterday for the first time in a while, and it's gone back up again a bit. So that was nice. But I mean, we're still in a really, really terrible place, aren't we?
We are indeed, Mike, and a very sort of sensitive metric of where we are is the oil price, and that's directly linked to this conflict, whether or not the Strait of Hormuz is operating. Is it open? Is it not open? Are the Iranians letting ships through? Are they not letting ships through? It's still pretty unclear. And so, oil's creeping back up towards $100 a barrel again this morning. And look at petrol and diesel prices. £1.60 for a litre of petrol, £1.90 for a litre of diesel. These prices are 20-30% plus up on where they were in mid-February before this latest escalation of turmoil in the Middle East began with those US airstrikes on Iran. I think what we've got here is a situation where President Trump's claiming victory, where the Revolutionary Guard in Tehran's claiming victory. They can't both be right. No. And if you look at what's happening now, is Israel, of course, is heavily involved. Israel carried on pummeling Lebanon last night. Since this ceasefire was announced, they're saying that the ceasefire doesn't apply to them. It doesn't apply to Lebanon. And now you've got the Israelis accusing Iran of what they call piracy. Piracy in the sense that the Iranians want to charge, and the US seems to have backed this, for ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. You can't overestimate when it should be free, because these should be international waters, because they're so important, even though they go within territorial bounds of both Iran and Oman. You can't overstate how important the mouth of the Persian Gulf is, Mike. I was down there, in mid-February, actually, before these strikes happened. I was in Oman. It's very narrow. It's 20 miles wide, like the channel at its narrowest point. Yeah. And through there, you don't just get lots of oil and gas flows. 1/5 of all the oil and gas that's used in the world every single day flows through that strait. It's also things like helium. Who knew? Helium is very important in the use of, in the construction of semiconductors, which are used in everything from cars to fridges to washing machines to phones. Pretty much all electronically oriented manufacturing now needs loads of semiconductors. And also, this is the big one, natural gas and ammonia, urea. These are the feedstocks for forming fertilizers. And now we've got really high fertilizer prices, not least in Asia. And that means that less food is going to be planted in Asia now during the key planting and growing season. And that will turn up in the autumn as a food price spike.
Right.
So the Iranians know exactly what they're doing when it comes to exerting leverage and imparting pain.
I think that's the point, isn't it? I mean, everybody knows, for example, that there is no answer to the military might of the United States of America. I mean, it is incredible what they can do. I mean, I remember hearing stories about the invasion of Venezuela when they went in to get the leader out of there, and they were using weapons the like of which nobody had ever seen. You know, sort of sonic weapons, which were making, you know, it was like something out of James Bond. You know, firing these sort of, you know, ridiculously modern, technologically superior, you know, sonic injuries on people, you know. But I'm also looking at the geography of the Straits of Hormuz. You've also got the other place, the Gate of Tears, as it's called, the Bab el Mandeb, which is the other sort of end,
Sea, that's right.
which sort of is another choke point between Yemen and Djibouti and Eritrea, where boats have to go. I mean, do you think that this will end up being a situation where people, I mean, there's been talk of building a pipeline to sort of change the way that the oil is moved around rather than putting it on tankers and sailing it through the Straits of Hormuz, which is controlled by Iran. Will it end up being a different way that business is done, purely and simply because the West will have to go, we can't be at the mercy really of the Iranians, because they kind of are, because what the Iranians are saying is, yeah, we can't beat you militarily, you're too big and too massive and too good, but what we can do is completely screw your economy.
Well, the first thing, Mike, is don't think that we're going to not need oil and gas anytime soon. I mean, it's just complete nonsense, whatever the hipsters tell you. 60 to 70% of the primary energy used in this country is oil and gas, is hydrocarbons. Back in early 70s, when we had a huge oil price spike, a huge oil price shock with the Yom Kippur War, the world was using 55 million barrels of oil a day. We now use over 100 million barrels of oil a day. So oil and gas, very, very important. Gas particularly important to the UK because we're a big energy importer. Even though we use renewables, you know, wind, solar and so on for 40% of our electricity production, as I keep trying to drum into the thick skulls of many people in the media and political class, electricity production is merely a third, if that, of all energy that we use. A lot of it's still oil and gas. A lot of that oil and gas is going to keep coming from the Middle East. You talk about the Gate of Tears, that's at the bottom of the Red Sea. There you have Iranian-backed rebels using RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades, to give ships a hard time coming through there. It makes it difficult for them to insure. We've seen that on and off for the last few years. The idea of a kind of double block, the Strait of Hormuz out the Persian Gulf, and then the Gate of Tears into the Red Sea, that stops oil and gas, firstly, getting out of the Persian Gulf. And then if it does get out of the Persian Gulf into the Indian Ocean, if you like, it then can't get to Europe easily because it can't get through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. It's got to go all the way around the entire African continent, which makes it much, much more expensive. Now, in terms of pipelines, now there already is a chunky pipeline between Saudi and the Red Sea, which doesn't need to go through the Persian Gulf. And that's been, the Saudis have been pumping oil and gas. You know, the Saudis typically export about 10 million barrels of oil a day. The world uses about 105. As I said, the Saudis have been pumping about 5 million barrels of oil a day through that pipeline already. That pipeline's existed for some time to the Red Sea. And then also you have a pipeline from UAE to across Oman that goes to the Indian Ocean, bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. But these again, it's volume. And also it's natural gas too. LNG is the really important thing, liquefied natural gas. So there are pipelines there, but I wouldn't be surprised if more bigger, thicker, faster pipelines were built in order to try and take the leverage away from the Iranians. This sounds like really complex stuff, but it really isn't. It's just about the reality that we use huge amounts of oil and gas. Despite all the green propaganda, that's going to carry on for a very long time. It's not just about energy, it's about plastics, polymers, use of oil and gas and hydrocarbons in all kinds of industrial and medical applications. These things are really, really important. And I don't see that this ceasefire, in quotes, has really secured supply. And I think financial markets are increasingly coming to that conclusion. And that means that we're going to feel the price effects of this for some time to come.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, just on a very, very, very sort of ordinary level, I stop every morning in a petrol station around the back of Southwark to pick up some papers on the way into work. And there's a guy's there every morning, and I said to him, I've been doing that stupid thing that you do, you know, where I've got to fill the car up with petrol, but I keep putting it off on the basis that, you know, I'll do it tomorrow because it'll be cheaper. And of course, it's not getting any cheaper. It keeps going. No. I said, what's going on? He said, you're going to reduce it tomorrow. I think it was 156 today for a price for a litre of petrol, and it was 153 yesterday. And he said, no, it's probably going to go up again tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay then. And tomorrow is the day I pretty much have to do it. So I'll just have to eat whatever it is. And the last time I filled up, I think it was 151. The time before that, which probably 2 weeks ago, it was 149. And it's a kind of relentless increase that you sort of don't notice, but you kind of do, you know, a bit like the way that we keep noticing that everything's going up in one way, shape or form.
Feeding into food prices. Food prices are key. If you think about food, you know, food needs to be transported. That's hydrocarbons. It's often packed in plastic. That's hydrocarbons. It's refrigerated. That's hydrocarbons. You know, it's sold in shops with the lights on. That's often hydrocarbons. So these inflationary pressures are going to carry on. And as we often say, when the oil price, as the oil price goes up and down, petrol and diesel prices on the forecourt tend to go up like a rocket and down like a feather. So they're always quick to go up and always slow to come down. And you know, people particularly people who drive for a living, listening to you will be nodding ferociously as we're discussing this, because we all experience it. I think it's worth saying that the government, you know, is quick out the traps to start blaming petrol and diesel retailers. Often it isn't their fault. I mean, as we know, 50-60% of what you pay on the forecourt is just pure tax.
Sure.
And that fuel duty could be going up quite soon. We don't know if the government's going to delay that increase. So petrol retailers, particularly the small independent ones outside of the motorway service stations and the supermarkets, they really don't make much money. They're squeezed from all directions. But it doesn't really make a difference. We're going to be paying a lot more for our fuel, and we're going to be paying a lot more for our food. Even if, Mike, unfortunately, even if suddenly the sun comes out and this ceasefire holds, and you see Netanyahu being lauded in the streets of Tehran, which obviously isn't going to happen. But even if that did happen straight away, the point I want to make is that because this Middle East escalation in violence in the Middle East has seen, you know, the bombing of oil and gas facilities around the Gulf by the Iranians, it's going to take a long time for those facilities to get back up online. For instance, Qatar, across the Persian Gulf from Iran, they've got the biggest LNG export terminal in the world, which has been damaged. And we don't know how long it's going to take to get that back up and running and on stream. Certainly months, possibly years.
Right.
The other thing to say is that these oil and gas shipping flows, they often take 4-6 weeks to get where they're meant to be. And for most, so most of the oil and gas we've been receiving over recent weeks left the Gulf, long before Trump actually began this conflict. So, but now, because of those delays, you're getting ships, tankers not turning up where they're meant to be turning up, orders not being fulfilled. And that's what leads to panic buying by countries, by wholesalers. And that's what pushes prices up. And I should say, the UK, I'm afraid it pains me to say, is vulnerable here. We don't have much gas storage. We rely heavily on, renewables, often 30, 40% of our electricity generation. But when those renewables don't happen, wind doesn't blow, the sun doesn't shine, we fall back on gas-fired power. And that gas-fired power, we use that despite the fact that we import lots of gas and we have very, very limited gas storage. And that does make us vulnerable on international markets. And this is why we're seeing, it's another reason why we're seeing utility bills very, very toppy in the UK. There's successive governments haven't cracked this gas storage problem. Successive governments have loaded costs on businesses when it comes to energy. We still have the most expensive energy pretty much for businesses in the developed world. And that undermines investment, that undermines hiring, that undermines job opportunities, that undermines growth. That means the government's got to borrow more. That means they want to put up taxes more. It's a kind of circle of doom, I'm afraid, linked to the price of oil and gas. And the price of oil and gas is now very, very much in the balance, not least as this ceasefire that was announced by the White House with such fanfare. It may be that the ceasefire isn't what it seems, and that is a ghastly reality that I think financial markets are gradually waking up to.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to ask you one final question, but just before I do that, a bit of breaking news. Apparently 4 people have died after a small boat accident in the Channel this morning. French authorities have reported that. We don't have a new deal with the French, obviously. They're not stopping anybody from going anywhere. Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has told Sky News she's deeply troubled by Israeli strikes on Lebanon. I mean, maybe she should think about what's going on between France and Britain before she does that. But final question for you, Liam. I mean, what should people do, or what should they be thinking about doing with their, if they've got any assets, if they've got pensions, if they've got, if they're doing what I was doing about 2 weeks ago, which I gave up doing because it was too depressing, watching the pension kind of just going like that. I mean, should you just sit it out, wait it out, hope that the things improve, or what?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Obviously, I can't give financial advice on your show or anywhere else because I'm not qualified to do so. But with a lot of these things, it's very, very hard within a pension to sort of try and time the market and move your money between different stocks and shares. I mean, what I would say is this: as a general rule, as a general thing, there's tremendous focus being placed on AI, all the tech stocks. The tech stocks, the Magnificent Seven, stockbrokers call them. Meta that owns Facebook, Alphabet that owns Google, Amazon, and Nvidia, of course. These are the companies at the heart of the tech revolution and the artificial intelligence revolution, and their valuations, what they're worth in stock market terms, is absolutely incredible. Nvidia alone, a company that makes chips, a kind of all end-to-end AI company, their valuation, Mike, if they were a country, if that company was a country, it would be the third biggest country in the world. I mean, it's completely mad. Over half the entire valuation of the S&P 500, which is the main US stock index, the top 500 companies listed in America, over half the valuation is tech stocks, right? Now, these tech stocks, their prices are very, very high. Everybody wants a piece of the action. They are the future. But a lot of these tech stocks rely on data centers, which in turn rely on energy, which in turn relies on oil and gas. And if energy is going to be really expensive going forward, then these tech stocks don't look as clever as they previously did, and the valuations look too high. And I think a lot of people in financial markets are coming to that realization that maybe these very, very high valuations on some of the tech stocks may not be what they seem. It may be that some of those stocks are heading for a fall. Now, I wouldn't want to will that. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but I do think it's something that people should keep in mind before they pile their money into, into stock exchanges around the world. And there has been a lot of hype around AI, but in the end, AI needs energy. Rachel Reeves has often said we're going to attract more AI investment than anyone else in Europe and so on. We've got a lot of tech talent in this country, but you try building a data center, you try getting a connection to the national grid, right? It can take literally years, years and years and years. And that is stymieing investment in this country. That is stymieing growth. And that's before, Ed Miliband's madcap scheme to decarbonize the grid by 2030, whatever that means. So I think what's happening here with this episode in the Middle East, this ongoing turmoil in the Middle East, is we're really reassessing a lot of the assumptions about net zero, a lot of the trendy opinions, a lot of the right things that you're meant to think in order to be a polite and civilized person. Because the reality is that we need energy, we need oil and gas, we need food. These are what certainly less well-off people disproportionately spend their income on because they have to, because they're necessities. And the idea that we should just leave a lot of oil and gas in the ground in the North Sea and elsewhere around the British Isles, tax it at 80% so it becomes economically unviable to extract it, I think that's for the birds. I think it's going to be impossible for Ed Miliband, whatever the strength of the Labour activists and the backbenchers behind him, it's going to be impossible to maintain this sort of po-faced purity that we're not going to drill for oil and gas in the North Sea, even though the Norwegians are, and they're coining it. They're drilling in the North Sea, very close to our waters, completely legally, and they're flogging their petrochemicals, their hydrocarbons to us. At great expense to us. And this is a completely unsustainable situation. It's completely mad.
It's completely
mad. So ministers can look good among their ilk as they go around international conferences congratulating themselves on how green they are. I mean, it's completely insane. And the politics on this is shifting very, very quickly indeed. And not a moment too soon.
Yeah, absolutely right. Liam, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. Liam Halligan, fantastic podcaster, of course, with The Telegraph, writes a column in there as well. Another fantastic guest we're about to speak to now, William Clouston from the SDP. Very good morning to you, William.
Hi, Mike. Hi.
Very nice to see you. I mean, tragic news as you walked in the door. 4 people dead in an accident in the Channel today, obviously on their way over. We know the weather's rather pleasant, the weather's good. We know that whenever that happens, you now sort of turn your head to the Channel and go, well, how many hundreds of migrants are going to come across? We don't know who they are yet, but it kind of sums up this government that Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, says that she's deeply troubled by Israeli strikes on Lebanon. Well, there's a lot of things closer to home, sweetheart, that you should be looking at.
Quite right.
And I don't say that as a misogynist, I say it deliberately to annoy her.
No, but it's the same as Starmer. We're going over to the Middle East. And
What's he doing there?
It's posing.
What's the point?
Posing, Mike.
Ridiculous,
pretending he's important when he's not important. He's an observer in this. I don't see what he can offer, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, one of the things they said yesterday was that he was going to visit the troops in the Middle East. Well, one, we haven't got very many troops, and 2, we're supposedly not involved in the war. He keeps telling us it's not our war.
I think it's like a sort of meme, isn't it? It's like a sort of hark back to the days when before the fall of Singapore. When a prime minister would go and do these things. It's ridiculous, frankly. And the juxtaposition always between posturing of this type on the international stage and not being in control of your own border on the south coast. I've made the point so many times. And a tragedy, and I heard that 100 people crossed the Channel, I think it was yesterday, 100.
Well, 5,000 since the beginning of January.
It'll just increase, and none of the slogans work. We've told them how to solve it. They can't solve it politically because they don't have the balls.
No, and they don't. Again, we've got Shabana Mahmood not being able to do a deal with the French. We've already given them 400 million, which didn't make any difference at all. The fact that she's trying to do a new deal with them suggests that she doesn't really have a clue what to do. She's written a cheque for 16 million quid in the meantime. To do what?
Nothing.
Exactly.
No, I mean the rhetoric again. The rhetoric from her is quite good. She took the trouble to go over to Denmark to have a look at what Danish policy was doing, and I think we can learn quite a lot from them. But the fundamental incentive remains, as long as we're keen on retaining the asylum system and staying in all the conventions.
Yeah.
The magnet is just too big for people to resist, and it's obvious. And I've said so many times, if you and I were in their position, you'd be foolish not to try, because you get such a huge thing for your family and for yourself that you've never paid for. You get it, and for as long as the incentives are there, the flow will continue. And the preoccupation with the French doesn't matter what the French do. I mean, the French, the paying the French several £100 million probably did have some effect on some things, but it won't change the fundamental magnet. The incentives are there. It's almost like a sort of cognitive dissonance, Mike, in the minds of these progressives. On the one hand, they say they want to try and deal with the problem, but on the other hand, they're so committed in their mindset, the whole way of thinking. I saw a clip, I think it was on Question Time last night. I didn't see it. I was actually busy last night, of a politician, basically arguing to try and solve the entire world's problems. We owe everyone a duty, and if anyone's nasty to someone, they have a right to come here.
Right.
It's childish.
Like we have to offer them some kind of sanctuary because
unbelievable.
This is the home of everything which is good and proper and right.
It's the way
and
they
meanwhile, the people who are already here are suffering. They can't go down the street. They can't afford to fill their car up with petrol, for example. They can't worry too much about their child going out on a Saturday afternoon without getting stabbed. Primrose Hill just the other day.
I know.
This poor kid, he's on the front page of the Mail, I think. He's 21 years of age. We don't know. I mean, the trouble is there is a video recording of it because everybody films everything now of these black kids running around stabbing each other. And you just think, what is going on? And Finbar, 21 years of age, his parents, who he was their only child, said he'd taken his camera up to do a bit of filming. Then we got a call to say he'd been stabbed, and he said, I can't. And imagine the horror of that as a parent.
You can't.
You just can't imagine how awful that is.
It's terrible. And meanwhile, the mayor is in denial about the reality of virtually every category of crime has gone up exponentially. And actually, the Times had a piece about it and put the figures out, and virtually every single category. Violence against the person, robbery, street robbery,
everything aside from homicide.
Virtually everything.
Which has only gone down by something like 4 people. Which is literally a sort of anomaly that is a statistical anomaly. But then also we saw, just before Easter, we saw the sort of marauding mass of young kids, mostly black, sort of steaming into a Marks and Spencer's in Clapham. Similarly, then doing the same to a Sports Direct. Just basically doing what they wanted, just nicking stuff.
Yeah, and if in the States where this happens, where shoplifting and stealing from staff and from customers in inverted commas gets really bad, what happens is that the stores just close. Walmart just closes the store. I don't think we're there at Clapham yet, but that's the logical end of when you have a collapse in civilization like this. Retailers just quit.
Well,
so they're not going to bother.
And it's already struggling. I mean, where I live, not far from Surrey Quays Shopping Centre, which was a thriving sort of place, a little bit old-fashioned in the way of its construction and all that, but it had a range, the sort of furniture supermarket. It's still got a big Tesco. The range moved out, and nobody's moved in.
No.
So one side of the shopping centre is completely derelict, effectively.
Dead frontage.
You've got even Poundland moved out and got replaced by a sort of an even newer, sort of slightly dodgier version of Poundland.
Half Poundland,
half Poundland, right? With some cheap tat. And there's about 5 or 6 just empty shops, and nobody's moving into them.
Yeah, I'm very concerned. I mean, there's a level of denial in terms of what our politicians do. They have all the slogans, but they import a lot of the northern cities are affected adversely by asylum seekers and hotels and hostels, HMOs. And there's crime associated with that. But the whole feeling is, it's funny, there's an X account which charts the real difference in house prices in flats and houses in London. I think it's called London Price Drop, something like that. And it's just actual empirical data. So they'll get the price of a flat what it was sold for today and what it was bought for 15 years ago.
Yes.
And then they adjust for inflation and tell you what and prices are falling. Prices are falling in London.
Massively.
And have been for a long, long time. And yet, out in the sort of British hinterlands, you know, if you look at places like Norfolk or Suffolk, Herefordshire, North Yorkshire, parts of the West Country, prices are going up and people are moving out.
People are going.
And I'm worried about the cities.
Well, you know what's interesting, and I can't find it because I looked for it the other day, but I read it, I think, over the weekend. There's a stat out now which says that there's more than 50% of the people of London, the people living in London, unemployed.
Yeah.
And it's a much higher level of unemployment than it is in any other part of the country. So London is now becoming a magnet for an awful lot of people from foreign
welfare
fields.
dependency.
Welfare dependency, and you know, large families. The 2-child benefit cap isn't not going to help.
No.
And literally, it's sort of lawlessness, unemployment, and so that's what London's going to be famous for.
But it eats away the...
And that's what happened. You know, you'll know this because you're a student of history. When I remember when I was living in America and I went to Detroit for the first time. Detroit was this, you know, incredible motor city. It was known as. It was where all the the cars in America were made. It was the heartland. They had a very bizarre kind of history. They had a place called Dearborn, Michigan, which was an outskirt of Detroit, where all the white people lived. And a place called Inkster, believe it or not, where all the black people lived. But as time went on, more and more people moved out of the city, and the city of Detroit, when I went there, had become a kind of just a ghetto of people who were just staggering around as they are now in San Francisco, on drugs, unemployed, drunk, you know, sitting on street corners, begging, whatever. No businesses, no shops, no work really for anyone. And so the city was completely hollowed out.
You destroy the economy, if you destroy the tax base of the city, and then you have high welfare dependency and crime, those ingredients will add up to the city falling. No, it's happened.
And I think it could happen here.
I think it's happening. I think we should wake up. I don't think you can argue that it could happen. I think it is actually happening. And things like Clapham, it's a prosperous, desirable area.
It is.
And if you want to raise a family, would the things that you see induce you to want to raise a family there?
Well, when I was moving back from Scotland to the south of England to work with 2 young kids, we took a decision that we don't want to be in London. Even then, this was back in sort of 2007, 2008. Because London just was 1, too expensive, and 2, not conducive to family life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, because it's 40%, and in London's case, 40% of graduate jobs are in London. So you get there's a huge magnet from the universities from all over the country. People come here.
Yeah, so if you're a youngster and you're looking to start your career, fine. Yeah. But once you get married and have a family, you don't want to be here.
Or if you have a choice. Yeah, I mean, the standard thing is people build their careers, don't they? Spend 4 or 5 years. I did this 5 years, and then we moved to Australia briefly.
Yeah.
But you'll always get that pattern. But I'm worried about the Eric Kaufman is worth a follow on.
Eric's a good guy.
Very good guy.
In fact, we should get him on the show.
You should get him on the show.
We used to get him on the show in the old talk show in the evening.
Yeah.
He's very, very good.
Very erudite. Yeah. So I think he's at Buckingham University now, but he's a social scientist and looks at these value divides and looks at demographics. And he recently posted some very interesting demographics on what they call self-assortment. People, and it is actually, the census proves it. Again, they've got all the rhetoric of diversity is our strength, but if you look at the northern towns in Lancashire and West Yorkshire, some of them are highly segregated, very, very segregated, almost like people would describe it as a sort of apartheid thing, by the street, by the neighbourhood. Yeah. People self-assort, but I'm worried about you. And actually, I don't think London is in the worst position. Probably the most vulnerable city is Birmingham.
Yeah.
Because you've got an incompetent government.
Well, there are entire swathes of Birmingham which are what you would call completely and utterly segregated, aren't they?
Very segregated. And then you get, and Nick Timothy did a brilliant job in exposing the pressure that supposed local groups, local community leaders, in inverted commas, had in stopping certain Israeli fans from watching a football match. That's an exercise of power. It's who's in control of our area. Yeah. And he's very good at that. But more broadly, you've got a bad government, an incompetent government now in Birmingham, which is the second city. Yeah. But after May elections, Mike, have you seen what that could happen there? Have you seen the number of independents, so-called?
So-called independents? What, you mean the Gaza Brigade?
No, literally. Yeah. Literally, I mean, some of the projections are saying there could be the biggest single group, if it is a group, if it is a coherent group. And so, some of the more radical Muslim voter blocks will peel away from the Labour Party. They've already done that, really. The Green Alliance seems to me to be utterly incoherent and ridiculous. I mean,
well, there's signs as well, aren't there, that some of the more kind of, shall we say, extreme side, sort of Islamist types, who are at the moment sort of aligned with the Greens, are going, hang on a minute, you know,
Yes.
we don't like that guy in the bondage gear.
I know, it's a bit,
that's
it's
not
a
really
bit weird.
for us. Right?
No, that shows, that clip showed it exposed the total incoherence of the alliance.
Yes.
As I used to say, in relation to some other groups that say Arab nationalism and liberalism is not really a brilliant...
No, it's a strange bedfellow.
Yeah, the only thing they have in common, which is the real reason for the alliance, is that they have sort of broader hatred of the West and Western values and any of our traditions, and that's what unites
And the
them.
hatred of Jews.
Yeah, and, yeah, obviously the anti-Semitism's there as well, but they have that, but that is not enough. Yeah, it was comical. But I mean, people should have a good look into the Greens, the detail of the policy.
Yeah.
Total open borders.
Yeah.
You know, on housing.
Apart from Palestine, of course,
Yeah.
which is allowed to have its own border.
That's allowed.
because
No,
that
of course,
needs,
yeah, that's an
that needs
exception.
its own state.
That's different.
But nobody
yeah.
else.
There were blood and soil ethnic nationalists on Palestine, aren't we, Mike?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what they want. But yeah, it's crazy. But you should look into it. It's dangerous that something like that could poll at 20%, and certainly be the top party among young voters. Promising things like rent controls. You know, that is economic stupidity.
Yeah.
You've got to look at the supply side. How much housing do you produce?
Right.
That's what you need to look at. What's the demand side? You know, mass immigration isn't going to help there. But just slapping rent controls on, been tried. It's
and
highly,
also giving people stuff because they can't afford it. And you just go, that's not going to work.
Just on the maths, Mike, we've got a new green paper coming out in a few weeks, and it looks very closely at entitlement spending. Is it sustainable? I'll tell you, it isn't. I mean, I know Liam talks a lot about this. Michael Simmons at The Spectator publishes stuff on it, but it's getting out of control. And in the end, you just destroy the tax base, and there won't be any. Well,
No.
What you'll get is
well,
a
that's
crisis.
what happens, as I say, to places like Detroit, where suddenly there's no tax base anymore, so the local government doesn't have any money. They can't get any money.
No.
And we got that a bit in towns on the south coast. Hastings, for example, is now full of unemployed people because the Hastings local council worked out, if we import a load of people from the north of England who are unemployed, we'll get their council tax paid by central government.
Yeah.
But instead, what they've got now is a town full of illegal migrants,
non-contributors,
people with walking sticks and pit bulls, and a load of drug dealers.
Yeah.
And that's your lot.
And that's gone. That's cooked.
Yeah.
I mean, it won't work. I mean, I would urge. I mean, we have exactly the wrong government to try and achieve this because they are, as we saw with the attempted cuts to disability benefit, the Labour backbenchers are innumerate children, literally don't understand anything, and have childlike views on things. So they can't even count. Literally can't even count.
No.
But what I'm worried about is, for everyone's sake, I mean, in a way, for their sake and the whole country's sake, is that if you don't adapt welfare spending and entitlement spending to what the tax base can actually afford, you'll get a crisis. And when you get the crisis, Mike, the cuts will be far more vicious and worse than anything you would have proposed to try and correct the problem.
Yes.
What we would advocate is have a look at what you can afford, do a correction possibly over 5 or 10 years to get it back in balance, People say, oh, you're terrible, you're cutting entitlements. I mean, there's certainly categories of entitlement in people, young people, where what the state is doing is totally wrong. What they're doing is saying, you have a mental health issue, our prescription as a state is to put you into inactivity.
Yes.
You speak to a psychologist, you speak to some therapist on this, and they'll say, there's a very worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
That will make the mental health issue worse.
Yeah.
You need activity, you need connection. You can't
And reason to get up in the morning.
But you must be compelled to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
You've got to turn up. And what they're doing is saying, forget it, here's the check, but just people are rotting on screens then. And it's the very worst thing. So the whole series of things you need to do quite urgently, and we will propose them when we publish the Green Paper, but people will say, oh, that's terribly harsh and everything. And I tell you what, it's not as harsh as the crisis.
Yeah.
It's not as harsh as what will happen if we don't deal with it. That's the point.
Absolutely right. Great to talk to you. We're out of time. We're not out of time. We're over time already. But there's a joy of being independent. You don't have anybody going in your ear. The news. What about the news? It's 9:36, right? William Pleaston is here. He's going to stay with us because you're going to hang around for Plonk of the Week, aren't you? Which will be very exciting. I don't know what we're doing today on that, but it's always a surprise. But stay with us because we're going to move over now to our new home, which is what we're going to be doing in the future at 9:30 every day, where we go over to UK Live, and you can find it on UK Live online, or if you are clever enough, and if you're on the YouTube scenario, although I've somehow seem to have lost my chat, I don't know why, don't know what's happened there. But if you're on the chat at the moment, you will get a sign which says hit this button and go over to UK Live, and then we'll carry on there, because we've got to do Pooch's Pooch, I think. Yeah. We can keep talking to William as well, but